up, Internet? My name's Nerdy, and this is the Nerdy, the Wordy, the Book Club. That's right, back for a solo pod. Just me today. Clarus, not reading Percy Jackson with me. Read the books years ago, I think, or something. I think she's read them. But I'm the one reading them for the channel right now because I'm getting into it. We're here today to talk about Percy Jackson numero tres. That's right. It's time to talk about The Titan's Curse, a book that continues a lot of what previously I liked and loved about the first two Percy Jackson books, while also introducing a bunch of very cool new ideas. And also, if I'm being honest, getting a little bit clunky in handling aging up these books into a more adult franchise as we head into what this war actually means for the people of Olympia, Half-Blood, Camp Half-Blood, and the children who are now going to start witnessing a lot more death. Gotta say a big ol' hello to everyone in the chat. Hi, live stream chat people. How are we doing today? Good morning, good morning. Yeah, Amboss Book Club on Wednesday. This was supposed to be on Monday. I am so sorry it wasn't on Monday. We had a mix-up with our contractor. Erudite Gaming over on Twitch says, "Oh, you like this character? It would be a shame if they died." Yeah. We start killing people. That's what happens in the Titan Curse. Characters do start dying in a way where I'll be really honest right off the top. I think one death is very successful, and I think the other death isn't at all, and made all of our characters look real dumb. Yeah. I was a really big fan of how Rick wrote one death and really disappointed in the other. And so I'm excited to talk about that and the ways in which I think that this book is successful in aging this franchise forward. You know, we've spent so much time in the first two books talking about how Half-Bloods die as kids, right? And how few of them make it to adulthood, and really just being told that keeps happening, while also following these very comical and fun adventures with children who do not seem that concerned with death, right? Like that hasn't been as much of a concern in moment to moment as much as it is something that we're told. And this book really goes to change that, as we have two kind of major character deaths who are both children, kind of children. But the reality of the book is that it's a huge inflection point. It's a huge transition point for the series, right? Percy and Luke's relationship has been on a pretty straightforward trajectory, but that's less so with Talia and with Annabeth. And I feel like this book really tried to cement the divide between particularly Annabeth and Luke. And the interesting thing about the book is Annabeth is in it so little. She's kidnapped early on, and then obviously we don't get her back until the end of the book. But at the same time, we get so much information about Annabeth from the way in which she is acting off page, through Percy's dreams, through the end of the book. And we really see that she still came into this book, despite everything Luke had done up until this point, everything leading up to the fight with the ponies on the cruise ship at the end of book 2, that Annabeth is still trying to save Luke here, right? And I thought that was really beautiful, and also just so sad because his betrayal leaves her, almost dead. But before we begin, today's podcast is brought to you by MistyMountainGaming.com. MistyMountainGaming.com is your place to get dice and the accoutrement necessary for you to play TTRPGs or any other kind of game where dice are rolled. If you go over to MistyMountainGaming.com, you can get 10% off your order with the coupon code nerdynightly. So make sure you check them out. We roll a metric butt ton of Misty Mountain Gaming dice in this house. And we are always grateful to be working with them. Sponsorship out of the way. Let's get to the beginning of the book. All right. The book, The Titan's Curse, begins quite differently from the previous two Percy Jackson novels, as Percy and Annabeth and Thalia are going to a dance at a school in the middle of winter in order to help Grover find dem kids. Death in the chat says, hi, when you started reacting to Percy Jackson, you said something like not knowing how the series moves forward because in season 1 the stakes were already so high. What's your opinion about this now? Ooh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think the real answer to that, Death, is that I think Rick Riordan as a writer doesn't do a great job of tonally setting stakes. The plot is very high stakes, and the tone isn't, which is much more okay for me in the first 2 books because the tone and the consequences feel like they align with one another. This book, it did feel a little bit weird, and we are going to get to that later on, but particularly after Bianca's death, the tone of this book felt very off to me, and Bianca's death did not change the tenor of the book enough. And it felt like Rick Riordan was like, I'm going to introduce death. I've talked about these kids dying so much. I'm going to introduce it and show that this happens, and then act as if Percy has seen a bunch of people die. And so he's sad about it, but he moves on, even though we know as the audience, it's the first person he's ever seen die. And there's, obviously it's different for Grover because Grover has lost people before, but Percy kind of really hasn't. Every person that Percy's lost weirdly has come back. And so, and maybe that's just what it is, right? Like every previous mission, someone in Percy's life has died, but they've always returned. So he just thinks Bianca's going to be fine somehow, and so that's kind of, they don't see a body, right? So that's how it gets around it that way. But I do think the stakes couldn't be higher, but the plot keeps having the books end with well, I guess we'll go back to school for a semester and then we'll rejoin the war once summer vacation happens. And there's an inherent weirdness in the tension of that, right? There's just something so bizarre in the concept of there being an ongoing war, but the children only the children who are fighting the war on the good side, I mean, are the gods good? They only fight the war on their summer and winter breaks, but the bad guys are always doing the war. It is a weird. It's a weird thing the books get around by never getting into. But there's a reason why Percy keeps showing up when it's already so dire, and it's because it doesn't feel like anybody's doing anything unless the stakes are fuck, we let Luke run rampant for 5 months and his plans are working because we didn't try and stop him. Why didn't we see this coming after the last 2 times? And so that's just an inherent weirdness. It doesn't ruin the books. I'm not saying oh my god, these books are awful. They're very fun, right? They're a good time. But there is just something very funny about being I guess we're going to go back to school now. Annabeth's dad saved us by illegally melting down celestial bronze, loading it into a plane that he flew and shot across the north side of San Francisco. I guess we'll go back to middle school until the gods tell us it's time for us to go fight the war again. It's just, there's a weird, the weirdness of, God, Luke's doing all this recruiting. He's doing, he's spending 6 months recruiting, and then Percy's I gotta go clean this up and push Luke back just enough that I can go, I've got to push Luke's plan back just enough that I can go back to school for 5 months so that he can build up his plan again, so that I can show up and in 6 days dismantle it just enough so that I can go back to school for the winter. And then at winter break, I'm going to push Luke's plan back just enough that I can go. And it's this weird cyclical thing of the people are dying. Why are you going to school? Why? What is the purpose behind you learning algebra right now? Get a fucking tutor. Poseidon is a god. Just have someone homeschool Percy while you use your resources to fight the war that's trying to destroy everything. And this is what I mean by like the stakes are so high at the end of season 1 is that we're like, oh, we're going to war. And then the characters are like, go live your life, man. We'll call you when we need you. And then Percy shows back up, everything's falling apart, and everyone is like, it's not that bad. Don't worry about it. And Percy's like, what do you guys mean? Why are we sending 3 people on quests? Luke has a fucking cruise ship full of monsters and demigods. Like, Luke is using his resources, and the people on the good side are fucking idiots. They're all so goddamn stupid. Chiron is so dumb. And I get it. It is because the structure of these books is like, oh, like the Oracle sends you on a quest and it's fun. And we want to keep that sense of adventure. But like now children are dying, right? And the idea that the structure of these millennia old beings is that they're like, well, we do this a certain way. And so we're going to pretend we're not in a war where our kids, like for the gods, it's like, my children are dying. My children are going to war and dying right now. And I'm not going to do anything to help that because I can't, because the other gods will be mad at me, but all the gods are on the same side, right? Like the book hasn't done a good job of explaining what the tension is and the gods stepping in and helping, because it's like, oh, well, like Hera can't help Hera's kid because Ares will be mad at her for doing that. Only makes sense until Hera and Ares are on the same side doing the same thing, right? Like the gods are a unit trying not to die. And so I can't fathom the world in which this takes place in, even though I am in that world having so much fun with it. Because the books are fun. Rick Riordan is an incredibly funny writer, right? He gets pacing of comedy really well, and you know, it's one of the weirdnesses between the show and the books is that the show isn't very funny. Like the show is very unsuccessful at comedy, and it tries for comedy and I think stumbles a lot in the comedic sensibility that it's trying to go for. And so it is one of the biggest tensions between the show and the books for me, is that like the old movies, I actually think the old movies were funnier than the show, but the tension between the show and the books for me is like Rick Riordan is very funny, and the reality of that is that the books are always kind of good even when they're not great. You know what I mean? Like the books never, even when the plot doesn't quite work. And there's a couple of moments in this book in particular where I think the plot doesn't quite work. The books never veer into bad because you're never having a bad time. And that can be a saving grace, particularly in younger adult literature, where you're trying to aim more for a message than you are for maybe the most like dramatic narrative payoff. And it does feel like these books are, you know, trying to give kids sort of a roadmap of morality and ideas about how to treat people and what does it mean to be a hero. And that sometimes being a hero is more in the moments where you're not not acting in a leadership role, but like, what does it mean to be a hero in a group where you don't always have to be in charge, right? And I think that's a really good lesson for kids to learn. And I think Rick Riordan is very good at teaching that through his messaging in his books. I think that's something he's very successful at. And so, you know, I can make fun of sort of the Olympian and how that works and be like, this is a nonsense. The war is nonsense, and the stakes feel a little bit nonsensical because the way the good side is fighting the war is nonsense, while also being like, these books are good, and I'm not trying to say that ruins them, right? Erudite says, I think part of it is the whole everyone puts too much weight in prophecy thing, so they all assume real shit won't go down until a child of the big three is 16. Yes, but children are dying. Like, I would agree with you if like we weren't, if every like other chapter some demigod wasn't saying, yeah, all these kids die all the time, man, it's crazy, and you're like, it's wild that we're not doing something about that when we could. I believe the divine non-interventionism thing is a rule imposed by Zeus, so the enforcing is up to him, and he doesn't really give a damn about his kids, and he's too self-important to care about the others, even to his side's detriment. I agree with that. I just think that in this case, Zeus is the one that they're gunning for, And so, Apollo being like, hey, Zeus, they're going to kill you. Hey, Zeus, that's funny. They're going to kill you. Can I stop them from killing you? And Zeus is like, nah, Percy's got it. Percy's got it. Jared Poulter on the YouTube says, I just now explained to my daughter that sometimes people don't do the logical thing in books or movies because doing the logical thing would ruin the plot. I agree with that. I do agree with that. And I think that you can get into that a lot by giving your characters flaws, Jared, right? I think that one of the things that frustrated me with this book is that the characters' flaws don't lead to their problems so much as their fluctuating level of intelligence. And I think that this book, more so than the first two, had our characters behave in ways that didn't necessarily feel like them. It felt like, particularly in the junkyard scene, which I just found to be it's sort of exhausting all the way through, which unfortunately leads to Bianca's death and what I think is just a very unsuccessful death in every metric. I think Bianca's death is by far the lowest point of this book in terms of what the book feels like it's trying to achieve and what the book feels like it's trying to say about Percy and the team, particularly with Grover. Like, I think the junkyard scene really makes Grover out to be a liability in a way that's unfortunate because it doesn't feel like he's growing with the other characters, even though he's way older than them. And like everything about Grover is very strange in these books. And I think that it is, Rick Riordan trying to have this bit of comedy, but in trying to have comedy, Grover both is like very committed to a cause and is an adult who's like almost 30. But at the same time, Grover's intellect and ability wildly fluctuate between like knows everything and is very helpful and really is quite incompetent and is the dumbest motherfucker alive. And the fluctuations between those two things make him a very odd character to try and feel like I can wrap my head around. He's just very inconsistent. And when he's hitting, Grover hits, man. He's so funny. He's a great friend. Like, he's a great part of the team. But then Grover is also the character that's often used to portray this, like, absurdism in terms of the mission and in terms of the listening. And it almost feels like he's supposed to be a warning to children what happens to people who behave poorly, but he's an adult. It's a very strange way to handle him. And I think it is less successful in this book than it was in the previous two books. And I find that unfortunate because the stakes of these books and because the slightly more adult nature of these books is starting to get heightened as characters die. Like a 12-year-old dies in this book. And that is a very like aggressive and violent thing to do. And I would rather it have happened without it being because the characters are just dumb. Mary says, for me, Bianca's death made me not like Zoe as she picked a newest girl to go on a quest that two people would die. Well, and like, I think Zoe's death is very successful in that it's very emotional. The scene afterward is beautiful. There is actually like an emotional denouement to it. But Zoe is a bad character. Like Zoe, and I think the problem with this book is it introduces two girls, kills both of them, and writes them both rather poorly, in my opinion. I don't think either of them is fleshed out in a way that makes a ton of sense, or they're not really given endearing qualities. They're just sort of emotional hits for two boys to take, right? Like he manages to kind of fridge both of them without either of them being that helpful, right? Zoe should be the most helpful person on this quest. She's thousands of years old. She's been a hunter of Artemis for so long. She should be able to solve all of their problems, but she can't because then there's no book. But if you're going to have her be there and have her not be able to solve all their problems despite being a hunter with thousands of years of experience, like Zoe should have resources. And it doesn't make sense that Zoe doesn't have any resources because she's thousands of years old and she does, like, this is her job. But she just is sort of useless, chooses the youngest child who has no training. They go on the quest, the youngest child with no training dies, and then Zoe dies. And along the way, Zoe isn't particularly helpful, other than the fact that she can drive, right? Like she kind of becomes a butler, even though you're telling me she's like a multi-thousand-year-old hunter who's been doing this for so long that she was there in ancient Greece and met Hercules. Arzu says Bianca's death was just too shocking. There was no moment to properly remember her afterwards. She became an afterthought. It was disrespectful. Well, and Arzu, I think that this gets back to what I was saying about the deaths in the first two books, where because Sally dies at the beginning of book one, and we're like, oh, his mom died. And then we're immediately like, no, she's alive. She just, Hades has her. Oh, okay. So death number one, it's not a real death. Percy can kind of, be immune to that. He's got to go save her. He saves her. Everything's fine. Book two, Tyson dies. And then Tyson comes back and saves them on the beach. And so there is this repetition of there's a shocking death and it turns out they're not actually dead. And so I think one of the weird things about Bianca's death in this book is Bianca dies, but in a way where her body doesn't die. There's no body, right? And so they walk up to the automaton and they find it empty and she's not there. And so I don't know if it was shocking as a death, because I wasn't shocked by the death until the end of the book when they're telling Nico that she's dead, right? I didn't believe it. I was like, oh, she's going to come back because we've done this before. We've done this twice. And so the weird thing about Bianca's death for me is that, but because of the precedent set by the first two books and the fact that we specifically don't see a body, which I think that Rick Riordan did because a 12-year-old body, them finding a 12-year-old body is just such a different experience. But because of the magic of this world and the fact that she died in a god's mech, I wasn't shocked by it. I was like, oh, okay, she's the person who dies and comes back at the end of the book. But she didn't come back at the end of the book. And so I was like, oh, okay, is she actually dead? And then they're like, oh, we have to go tell Nico that Bianca's dead. And then Nico's like, oh, yeah, she's in hell. And I was like, oh, wild. Wild. That girl died. But, like, I didn't... Percy, Grover, and Talia and Zoe weren't really that sad. They didn't spend any time thinking about Bianca after her death. They just kind of moved on to the next thing. And so I just felt like the book was trying to tell me, don't worry, it's the third fake out in the third book. But because she's actually dead, I feel like they should have taken more time after her death to acknowledge that this is the first person Percy's actually seen die, right? And then obviously Zoe, he sees her die too. That needs to change Percy in some way, right? I when I was 12 years old, I watched my grandmother die. She'd been very sick for a long time. It was just awful. She had been in the hospital for like 6 months, and we drove down to Mobile, Alabama, and it was finally summer, and we were gonna go see her, and so we drove down and we took her out of the hospital, and we took her back to her mobile home. And we were in the mobile home with the whole family was there, right? We all gathered. And there was a point in the middle of the day where she just slipped off, And I cannot imagine a more beautiful way to die than to be smiling, surrounded by everyone that loves you. And even though it was what I would say is arguably the most peaceful way to go, it changed me so fundamentally to be in the room when that happened, right? Even in that situation where the stakes could not be lower, no one was freaking out. We all kind of thought it was coming, right? We all kind of understood what we were there for. We were driving down to say goodbye. Even if she hadn't died that day, we were still driving down to say goodbye to her, right? Despite the fact that all of those things were true, I was a fundamentally different person immediately. And to me, the event of Bianca's death Percy can hear all the stories of all of these demigods who have died on missions, right? But he didn't know any of them. He knows this girl. She's the youngest of them. She's the one that they all have to look out for because she shouldn't be on the fucking quest, Zoe. And her death just felt a little bit like, well, fuck, she's gone. Let's get to the Hoover Dam, kids. We've got to go see a mortal that's going to tell us some weirdness. And there's just something to the way this book tries to move on and pivot back into the comedy of Percy Jackson that really made me think that she just wasn't dead, and the book was trying to signpost that it was a fake out. And that's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate. I wish, if Bianca is actually dead, I wish she'd had more to her than just being a sister who didn't want to deal with her fucking brother anymore. Right? I wish she had been more than a mystery about Bianca is treated more as a mystery about how old she is and where she's from than she is as a character. She's a puzzle for the characters to solve and not a person. And so in that, her death feels a little bit underwhelming because she doesn't really feel three-dimensional. Also, the prophecy said lost, you assume she would be found eventually. Well, yeah, because we've lost Annabeth. At the beginning, here, and this is one of the things that this book does that's really weird if you want this death to hit. If you don't want the death to hit and you want it to be kind of nebulous so that kids don't get too scared, I get it. Then he did the right thing. It's nebulous as hell. But the prophecy that they're on says lost. And when Annabeth falls, people keep saying that Annabeth is lost. And so there's this very odd tension in they using that word twice and knowing that Annabeth is alive means that when Bianca dies, she's lost, you're like, oh, like Annabeth. Oh, okay, she's somewhere. And then the end of the book really is like, no, she's dead. And it's just, I don't know. It is the clunkiest part of this book for me for sure. Everything from when they get to the junkyard till Bianca's death, and then the scenes leading up to the Hoover Dam are clunky. We book gets to the Hoover Dam, and once it gets back into the action of it, I actually feel like the book rights itself again and kind of gets the minecart back on the tracks, and we rocket towards the finale, which is absurd but very fun, and I enjoyed quite a bit. It's really just the junkyard scene that feels, starting with Grover hearing that it is Hephaestus's junkyard and hearing Percy be like, don't touch anything. And Grover goes, what do you mean? It's just Hephaestus's junk, and then eating it. And I'm Grover, are you the dumbest person alive? Right? Like, are you in running? Are you competing? Are you trying to be a Twitch streamer? And you're like, oh, the only way to grow on Twitch right now is to do the dumbest possible thing a human can do. And he provides such a poor example for Bianca that Bianca dies, right? But if I was Bianca and I'm on this quest and I'm with these people who are all professionals and I see Grover be like, oh no, it doesn't matter. Her being like, oh, well, if it doesn't matter, really, Percy's just freaking out. And like Grover gives Bianca the permission to do what she does, which leads to her death. And I agree with you, Arzu. I hope the show fixes this scene. I hope the show, and obviously the show can't really do this scene, weirdly. We'll talk about that at the very end of the podcast. We'll talk about how the show can't adapt this book without changing almost everything. Just because of the what they changed with Zeus and Talia at the end of season 2, the adaptation of this book is going to be a wild experiment in trying to get Talia on this mission and explain why she's a part of anything at this point. But, and again, I don't understand. I don't understand why we are adapting the books into a show and calling it a faithful adaptation, and then just like fundamentally changing characters immediately upon introducing them. I don't get it. I don't really understand why. It does feel like the show's fucking around in a way that worries me for the future of the show. But yeah. Erudite says the sum of his highs and his lows and just ends up making him feel like a pet more than a member of the main protagonist cast. I do agree with that. I do agree with the idea of him almost feeling like a pet. It feels like Rick Riordan is trying to say that his goat brain makes him dumb, But I don't know what to do with that. Like, I don't know how I'm supposed to respond to, well, he's dumb because he's a goat. And I'm like, well, then why is he on the mission? Like, Percy liking him. Are there no intelligent satyrs? And if all of the satyrs' goat brains make them dumb, why are they the ones who go find demigods? Why not just always send other demigods? It feels like sending demigods is the better move. Arzu about Thalia says, getting her to pray to her dad at the Hoover Dam will certainly be a challenge. I mean, this fucking book starts with them going to war with the Manticore dude, and she's like, for Zeus! She literally shouts for Zeus at the beginning of the book, and I was reading it, I was like, what is the show doing? Why are we just changing this? What is the purpose of changing it? And this is where I'm struggling with it, right? Is what is the purpose of changing it? It's just to be different, right? Like the books are so successful. They're so successful. And people want to see them adapted. This is the thing about Western media that drives me crazy that anime fucking gets. And anime is understanding more and more. Anime is like, hey, there's this manga. It exists. It already has sort of everything fleshed out. All we have to do is animate that. And then they make it. And people go, hell yeah. They animated the thing I love. And I'm going to give it all of my money. I'm going to like wear the clothes. I'm going to do all of the merchandising. Merchandising. I just want to watch the thing that I love made into a different medium. And manga and anime have this symbiotic relationship where when an anime is announced, people generally assume that for the most part, it's going to be very faithful and they can watch the thing that they want to watch again. And then in the Western media space, we're watching anime become the most dominant force in cultural growth, right? Right now, globally, anime is the most dominant force in young people's cultural experiences, not in financials. I want to be clear. Older people with more money spend more money on things other than anime. But in terms of young people watching media, anime is the shit. All you have to do is adapt the thing accurately to what people liked because you know that thing is successful. Every single thing that you change in your adaptation is something that you have to worry won't succeed because the thing that succeeded is already out there in the book. And it's why like changes like Thalia and Zeus's relationship at the end of season 2 baffle me. Because I'm like, no, people liked what happened in the books. Now, as I say that, I'm saying like I want Bianca to be fleshed out more. I want Thalia to be fleshed out more. And in the adaptation, you can flesh things out more while keeping them true to what the books did because the book succeeded. But the risk in change is that you might strip away the success. And I think that the show, for me, has mostly done that. I think the show is not successful. And I think that a big reason is they've made it not funny. And they've made it not funny. And that to me is a big problem. Arzu says, I think they could potentially make the relationship more interesting. I think you can make the relationship more interesting. The show didn't make the relationship more interesting. They made it the exact opposite, right? You can make Thalia and Zeus have a more complicated relationship without saying that Thalia hates Zeus and Zeus tried to murder Thalia without murdering Thalia, right? There is a wild difference, though, between we're going to complicate this relationship and Thalia hates Zeus. Just fucking hates him and is right to hate him, right? That's where it's weird. Is you're not plumbing these characters for more depth. You're like, these characters are going to do something else. And when you get, I said I was going to do this at the end of the podcast, but I guess we're doing it now. When you get these characters and you just change them, you change how the plot... And I was saying this about... what TV show was I saying this about? The downstream changes that you have to make because that character's interactions with every single person change because you fundamentally change them means that the more little changes you make early on in things, the bigger changes you have to make later on, right? the butterfly effect of storytelling is thus. And doing a 180 on Talia is going to lead to 180s in everything Talia does, leading to, like, at the end of this book, when Talia is like, I give up the power to make this decision, I'm going to go be a hunter. Why would she do that in the show? Why would she go work with Artemis? Why? Like, why doesn't she go join Luke? She should. Her dad locked her in a tree for 6 years. Intentionally. As punishment. Why would she become a hunter under Artemis who's under Zeus? It doesn't make any fucking sense. And so when Luke is like, hey, come join us, we're going to take down the gods, show Talia should be like, hell yeah, brother. We ride at dawn. My dad locked me in a tree for 6 years. And it's just this fundamental thing of like, well, but you've changed that. She's not going to yell for Zeus at any point in the book. So the idea that she's going to stay under the gods' control at the end of season 3, just, it doesn't make any fucking sense to me anymore. And that to me is a change that I liked it when I was watching it because I hadn't read book 3. I didn't know where the series went on page. And so when I was watching the show, I was like, oh, this is a cool story to follow. Not realizing that when I read the book, I was going to go, oh, so you just can't do the book anymore. Erudite Gaming says, show Talia is basically ally in a box for Luke the way they wrote her. Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. She should be an ally to Luke. It doesn't make sense for her. Given what Zeus did, it doesn't make sense for her not to be. I also... I am a little... I have no problem with the recast of her being black. I want to be very clear. I am in no way saying she shouldn't be black. I am a little concerned, and I am hopeful that the writers manage to like massage what they've done here. But I don't want to see is them have cast her as black and have changed her narrative to make her far angrier at Zeus and have her come into the season as this angry black woman trope, right? There is a little bit of... The book Talia is competitive with Percy, but they're very much on the same page about what their goals and their desires are, right? And so they can be antagonistic to one another while working towards the same goals. It doesn't track for me that show Talia is necessarily going to be on the same page as Percy in terms of her long-term goals and in terms of her relationship with the gods, her relationship with Camp Half-Blood, right? And I want them to be... If I was in that writer's room, I would be working really hard to make sure that we're not just having this black girl that we've put into this role have to play angry all the time, right? And to give her moments of levity in a show that thus far has not been that funny, in order to sort of steer her away from looking like we cast another black girl and we're just going to make her like the angry black woman on our show. And it feels like with the change they made to her relationship with Zeus, they've set themselves up for that problem a little bit. And I'm curious how they're going to kind of walk that line. I do think the diversity of the show has been handled mostly really well so far. So I think that I'm hopeful that they will figure that out. It's just something that kind of struck me as like, oh, you've kind of created a trope. And you're going to have to unwind that a little bit and not have it look like you have like your like shining white protagonist lead and the like angry black girl with him that's kind of an antagonist to him and maybe is going to be evil and have the two of them on a mission together. You know what I mean? There's something to that where I'm hopeful they're cognizant of and prepared for that so that it doesn't come across a certain way. Does that make sense? Pink Armada says they're going to drop all the humor except the Hoover Dam joke. That's my guess, especially because I read it as a morbid hysteria type of humor. Yeah, I mean, I hope they don't. I think this book's funny. I hope they keep more of the humor in, honestly, because it's an entertaining... Percy's wit is so wildly entertaining. And I wish there was more of it in the show, man. The book version of Percy is so quick. And he thinks on his feet and, like, I don't know. The other thing I really don't want the show to do, and they did it in season 2 in a way that I thought was clunky, was try and make Annabeth's time on the mountaintop a plot. This happened with the Clarice Grover stuff in the show. We never talked about it last week because I had forgot about it. What happened to the fucking sea monster that was helping Polyphemus in the show? Grover is kidnapped by tentacles in episode 1, and then that goes nowhere. That's never explained. That never comes back. I was just, like, thinking about the show the other day, and I was like, what the fuck were those tentacles? What, like, why change the start of the show from having Polyphemus catch Grover in Florida to Grover is caught by tentacles on a random island, just for that to never come back or be relevant to anything ever again? I don't know. Wild. We started at the top of the book. I thought the tentacles were supposed to be Scylla. Isn't Scylla confined? I don't think Scylla moves, right? Also, Scylla's tentacles are fucking massive. They're not, like, human size. I don't know. Arzu says all the Mr. D jokes need to exist or I riot. Oh my god, yeah. Get Jason Mantzoukas in this more, man. He is one of the best parts of the show for sure. I think the more Jason Mantzoukas the show uses, the better. We start the book. Back to the chapters. Let's talk about this in order. We start the book. Percy, Annabeth, and Talia have been picked up by Percy's mom, who's driving them on a mission, I guess, to go to the winter solstice party at this military-style school because Grover says that there's 2 very powerful young demigods there. We find out that Talia can use the mist and that Percy also can, but Chiron's never told him that. It felt like this was being brought up so that Percy could ask Chiron about it, and then he never does, so I'm not really sure. This felt a little bit like... this felt like something that was a weird retcon, that suddenly the demigods can use the mist. I don't know. Moving forward, it is helpful because it does kind of give them the Doctor Who magic paper kind of situation where they can get in and out of scenarios quickly. And I think that part of this is so that Rick Riordan set himself up with, after 2 books, realized, hey, my characters keep ending up on the wrong side of the law, and I need to be able to have them move through the world without that happening. And so it does feel like a retcon to give him a way out of having the police constantly looking for Percy in his books, by having Percy have the ability to be like, I'm the FBI. Misty. We meet the bad guy. He is a manticore. He's a manticore. They use the mist to get past the teachers. The manticore they go to the gym. We meet Bianca and Nico D'Angelo. They are definitely not the children of Hades, even though I think I figured it out, and they are. And we get a scene that is, I am assuming, very exciting to fans of Perkabeth, where Percy is trying to figure out how they're going to act normal and dance. And Annabeth is like, fucking dance with me. Just dance with me. Why? Percy's like, who do I ask? Talia and Grover go off dancing, and Percy's like, God damn it. Well, okay, Annabeth, I don't know who you're going to dance with, but I definitely don't know who I'm going to dance with. And Annabeth is like, you fucking nincompoop, dance with me. And Percy's like, oh, right, yeah, cool, yeah, girls. Hell yeah, brother. Girls. Annabeth's not cute. I don't look at the god of love and see a little bit of Annabeth in her face, which is going to be real weird because Kate McKinnon. Look, I am in no way. I'm not I want to be very clear. I'm not laughing because I don't think that Kate McKinnon can play Aphrodite, right? Kate McKinnon's hot. Very much not interested in me. And good for her. I hope she's living a very happy, healthy life. But if the book said that Percy looks at Aphrodite and what he sees is kind of Annabeth-like, and I was looking at Leah, the actress who plays Annabeth, to cast the character that reminds Percy of Annabeth, Kate McKinnon would not be my choice. I just, if that moment is trying to say something, and that moment is trying to say something, like that moment is about the fact that Percy can't, he's too emotionally mature to understand that he's falling for this girl, right? But that moment is trying to say something that the show is like, nah. We are gonna cast this white lesbian who could not be less like Annabeth in any way. Unless I don't know, man. I just hope they don't do, what was that movie, Cloud Atlas, where where everyone was like in yellowface for like scenes because they were the same people across time. So sometimes they were Asian and sometimes they weren't, and so there was like weird skin manipulating. That movie's so weird. It's actually kind of incredible. It's really well made. The white people in Asian face does make it like a tough watch. I don't know. It's a movie where if it weren't for the history and like meaning of yellowface, I think the movie would actually really work. But because those things do have a meaning that I think the writers and directors were trying to make their movie without the context of, the audience still had the context of. It's yeah. If you've never seen it, I do kind of recommend it, even though I'm acknowledging in advance, it is, there are parts of it that are very strange to like just experience in terms of people being race swapped, but not, yeah. Go look it up on your own. So Percy and Annabeth dance, and it's cute as fuck. Obviously they're gonna end up together. You know what I mean? Fucking Aphrodite drops true love later in this book. It's crazy. And while they're dancing, they notice that the guy, the Manticore, is hanging around the two kids, Bianca and Nico D'Angelo. Bianca is like 12, Nico's like 11 or 10 or something. I don't know. They're kids, and Bianca is sort of just like a prototypical older sister. Nico is a nerd who probably gets beat up a lot because, you know, he mostly plays with Yu-Gi-Oh cards or action figures. And all of a sudden they're gone. Talia the Manticore starts rushing them out of the room. So Talia, Annabeth goes off to find Talia and Grover. Percy realizes that they're not going to catch up in time, and so he takes off after the Manticore and kind of ends up alone with him. Unfortunately, Manticore manages to poison Percy, so he is pretty much fucked. It gets bad really quick. Percy is totally outmatched, and the scene leads to them all being at this cliff nearby, with Talia starting the journey of being upset with Percy because Percy is kind of doing things on his own against the plan, even though the arguments between them two about what is the plan and what is adaptation. What was Percy supposed to do? Wait, they'd be gone. Like, the only reason they're able to follow the Manticore is because Percy goes. And so, yes, he went, but, like, it kept them sort of tethered through him so that they could get to the same place and not let the kids get away. It doesn't matter. Talia is frustrated with Percy. And a fight breaks out. Emerson Wright says, "What's wrong with playing Yu-Gi-Oh?" There's nothing wrong with playing Yu-Gi-Oh, Emerson Wright. But in my experience, when you're about 10 years old, if you play Yu-Gi-Oh all the time at school, the other kids beat you up. And that was mostly because when I was 10 years old, I played Yu-Gi-Oh at school all the time, and the other kids beat me up. So that might be different now. It's 2026. That was 2000 and something. 2002. I love Yu-Gi-Oh! I have literally... I have my Mint 10 Dark Magician Girl card within arm's reach. So when I'm not making fun of anyone. I'm just acknowledging that if you care a lot about cards in the Japanese size trading card games, that will get your ass kicked in middle school, in my experience. Oops. What did that do? Are we still live? Yeah, okay. So, we get to the fight on the cliffside. We find out that Talia has a dope-ass shield, Aegis, that kind of looks like a Medusa on the front, and has like a fear effect, which is very cool. She also can direct lightning, which is an incredible power. She's so strong. The only problem with Talia is that she's so strong, but she's also like 12 still. Which is a weirdness in the show. I get why it's a weirdness in the show, because they couldn't have like recast her. But this girl is like physically kind of 15, almost 16, but she's mentally 12. Which gets weird later in the book, because when they get to the mountaintop, her and Luke are fighting, and she's like, "I always was better than you." And I'm like, Luke should destroy her. Luke's been training for 5-6 years. And she's been a tree. Like, Luke would... Sometimes Rick Riordan, in order to have any of this make sense, relies on your demigod level is how good you are at things. Because otherwise, like, Talia should just not be able to compete with anyone, right? She didn't train at Half-Blood Hill. She has been in a tree for 6 years, and everyone else has been trying to work and improve since then, right? Particularly Luke. And so there is a weirdness in... Mary says, "I thought of it being that Luke was holding back to get her to join him." I mean, maybe you can say that. That's a hard, like, you can come up with an excuse for it, but the book really does treat Talia like she just is competent, despite not really having a reason to be. And I think that I think that there is a version of this book where the book acknowledges that there's a version where when they get to the school at the beginning of this book, instead of having Talia have been in school with Annabeth for the past few months, which just doesn't make sense on like so fucking many levels, right? Like, what grade is she in? You can't just take a 12-year-old and put them in high school and have them understand any of the fuck what's going on, right? Especially because they missed 6 years of life. But if there had been if they had gotten Talia and she'd been like, "This has been crazy. The past 6 months, I have been tutored and I've been working at Half-Blood Hill to catch up. Oh my God, so much has happened in 6 years. Culture has changed," right? Like, one of the weird things about this book, because when would Talia have gone into the... I guess these books don't really say what year it is, right? Wait. We have to go back. No, we have to go back to the dancing. Stop. Hold. Time out. We have to go back to the dancing. We have to talk about Annabeth's dream really quick. We just have to talk about Annabeth's dream. Her dream is that she designs a monument for Ground Zero. which means that like 9/11 happened in the Percy Jackson universe. And I have so many questions about that choice. Right? Like, I understand the idea that you want these books to be relatable to modern kids. And so you're like, oh, I'm going to write the book to take place in the world they live in. But, like, wouldn't Zeus step in to stop 9/11? What question? Zeus can't melt steel beams? I think that once you start to center the fantasy world in New York City, and you say, like, planes are dangerous because they're in Zeus's domain. If Zeus represents the power of the West in your world, if you're saying, like, the seat of the West is the seat of the Olympians and the seat of the gods, and the gods are the West, referencing 9/11 leads to some of the strangest questions about, like, did Zeus view 9/11 as an attack on the West? And if so, why did he allow his seat of power to be attacked by planes, which are his domain? Why reference it? And I'm not trying to say that, like, I wanted the book to say that, like, Zeus stopped 9/11. I just am like, don't bring up 9/11 in your fantasy world. Your fantasy world doesn't need 9/11. It just doesn't. And for the only reference to 9/11 to be that Annabeth wants to design a memorial for Ground Zero is beyond bizarre to me. Like, she's not from New York. Right? Like, she's from DC, kind of. Why does she want to design a 9/11 memorial? Like, what about 9/11 would be... Because this book comes out in what? Like, this book takes place in, like, 2013, 2014, right? Oh, no, this book came out in 2007. Okay. Can I help you? Oh, okay. This book comes out in 2007. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about this. If this book takes place in 2007, then... Oh my god. If this book takes place in 2007, that means that Talia went into the tree before 9/11. So at some point, Talia had to have 9/11 explained to her because she woke up 6 years later. That's wild. It makes more sense why... I thought this book was like 2014. If it's 2007, it makes more sense why Annabeth would be interested in... Because she goes into the tree 6 years earlier during the summer, right, Pinky Armando? So she would have, like... Oh my god. Wait. I figured it out. I have figured it out. I know why Zeus didn't stop 9/11. He was grieving having to put his daughter into the tree. Because it was like 3 weeks early. It was like August, right? And so he has to put Talia in the tree. And then in his grief, 9/11 happens. And so for Annabeth, she makes it to Half-Blood Hill, which is like an hour out of New York City, right? She makes it to Half-Blood Hill, loses Talia to the tree, has this traumatic thing, and then on the fucking horizon, sees the smoke of 9/11 like 3 weeks later. That's crazy. Zeus does kill Talia in the books, Emerson. He's not intentionally doing it, but Zeus is the one that turns her into the tree because she's dying. So from like, because, and Annabeth doesn't know she's ever coming out of the tree. So like the fact that Zeus doesn't intentionally kill her in the books, they think she's functionally dead. They think she's a tree. Like they don't think she's coming back. Victor Desana says, so to remember, in the universe, all wars are apparently connected to the gods, and that's a whole thing you could dissect. But like, I know, Victor, and that's why I'm like, because you've now referenced that 9/11 happened, are like, is there a demigod camp in Afghanistan where the descendants of like Muhammad launched 9/11? Like in Rick Riordan's universe? Because I know further down the line in these books, we get the Roman gods, which I'm very confused how the Roman gods show up, because aren't they the same gods as the Greek gods? Like, it's gonna be like, I'm Jupiter, and it's like, yeah, you're kind of the same fucking character. And then I think that there's the Egyptian gods, right? Like Set and them. I think that's a different. And so, is 9/11 in this world the descendants of like the Muslim god attacking Zeus? This is why you just don't, this is why I say, this is my point when I say, don't do 9/11, right? Don't directly have your characters say, hey, Zeus and Hades' children caused World War II, because that's wild. Just don't do that, because it leads to so many weird fucking questions. It was the same in fucking like the Harry Potter being like, yeah, Grindelwald was like part of World War II. It's like, oh, that's insanity. Yeah. It just gets really messy because real people died, and you don't want to make light of those things, right? Like you don't want to trivialize real deaths into your fantasy story. And sometimes using 9/11 and being like, it's connected to my fantasy thing, feels like you are trying to say that those deaths were trivial. And I just don't agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. Just wild. Just very, very strange. It's a very strange thing. It's also partially strange because what Rick Riordan is saying with that is that despite the fact that the gods are there and they interact with the world, that doesn't change anything about the world. And that the world is just fundamentally the same as our world with the gods interacting with it. Even though and maybe that is a way for Rick to be like, this could be real. Ooh, maybe this is happening. Yeah. Victor Sana says, Percy Jackson is very much like Harry Potter tonally. The inspiration is direct. I definitely agree with that, right? Like, I think that Percy Jackson wouldn't exist in the form that it does if Harry Potter didn't come before it. And there's a lot of inspiration from Harry Potter in Percy Jackson. I do think Percy Jackson is more successful than Harry Potter in certain ways. I think it has a lot of the same issues that Harry Potter has in others. And I think that Percy Jackson, unfortunately, leans on convenience in ways that kind of break the book. In ways that break the book, unfortunately. Like, there's now just too many ways to fast travel in the Percy Jackson universe for me to buy all of the problems that they have getting around. And the way in which travel is trivial, but our characters are constantly struggling to get around, is just very bizarre. Like, you have herds of centaurs that can run across the country in hours, but you don't call them up and be like, hey, the world is going to come to an end. Can you come help us out? And I do understand that this is the Eagles' problem, right? But the Eagles in the Lord of the Rings do have the limitation of, if the Nazgul come attack us, we're fucked. And if we're just flying on eagles, the Nazgul can ride the Fell Beast and they'll know where we are because we'll be on giant eagles in the sky, right? Like there's the fundamental issue of if the Witch King knows where the ring is, we are in trouble, right? The problem with the fast travel, the many different fast travel systems, because every creature that they meet, and in this it's the elephant cow thing, everything just like can travel at warp speed around the country and can just be anywhere at any time. And we have magic that like teleports us around. There's beads that do it. There's so many ways these books have established that you can travel super fast, but they don't ever use them at the beginning of books. They only use them at the end of books because it's like, oh, well, we don't want to road trip all the way back, so here's a convenience. That is a very strange thing to do, in my opinion. And I think that it is a convenience that these books are all sort of susceptible to, that I do credit Harry Potter with not leaning on nearly as hard, right? The rules around fast travel in Harry Potter are a lot stronger. Meanwhile, you know, despite being a much more problematic franchise and, you know, obviously fuck J.K. Rowling. But, you know, I complained about this in book 1 of Percy Jackson. Like, I wish the travel was more buttoned up, particularly at the very end when the cops all pass a hat to buy plane tickets for the kids that they just found who had been kidnapped victims, that they just put on a plane later that day. The end of the first Percy Jackson book is truly insane. Like, it's so stupid that I can't even... The sequence of them getting found by the police to the police being like, we'll just like buy them plane tickets and put them on a plane home and hope that someone's there to collect them, even though we do not know who Annabeth Grover's parents are. That is some of the most nonsensical writing I've ever read in my life. And so this series does do this quite a bit, where there are the conveniences limit my ability to be like, this is brilliant. I don't think these books are brilliant. They're very fun, and I like the world, and I enjoy being in it, while also being like, Rick Riordan leans on, don't worry about it. Is this stupid? Absolutely. He's got to get back to Mount Olympus with the lightning bolt. This book does it too, with the like, the MacGuffin cow thing. The MacGuffin can teleport to wherever Percy is because we need him to be important to the plot. Okay. I guess he could teleport to wherever Percy is because that's the plot. This plot just desperately needs him to just kind of show up everywhere. Is like, all right, fine. I guess. I don't know, man. Like, I think the book wants me to think that it's cool. Oh, he's there. I didn't. I was like, oh, okay. I guess none of our characters have to work to get to the information because it just pops in front of them at every chance that it gets. God, we've barely gotten through any of this book. I've been talking so much. But also, yeah, the inconsistencies are just part of its spunk. Oh, 100%. And they are fun. I do think that they are limiting, right, Pinky? Like, I think the inconsistencies and the way in which the world is built do somewhat limit my ability to fully invest myself in these books. There is an element of the hand-waviness of the novels that puts a limit on how much I care about things like character deaths, because we've established that going to Hades is not necessarily... It doesn't mean anything, right? Because the stakes of death have already are from the very beginning of this franchise essentially zero. It doesn't mean anything later when people go to Hades, because you can go to Hades and get them back. We've seen it happen. Bianca can be dead. She could be. Rick Riordan has left it open that she's not, right? It's not guaranteed she stays dead in this franchise. It's only if, like, Rick decides that she stays dead. And there's a lot of Greek myths that do this, but they do this at the end. And because Percy Jackson starts with it with Sally, because the first thing we see is she turns into dust and she's gone, Bianca just not being in the mech doesn't mean she's dead. right? We just established that that doesn't mean death in this world. And when you start with that, you have to reckon with that moving forward. Especially because at the end of this book, we see Zoe die. And so we're like, oh, okay, that's what death looks like. If we see them die, then that's what death looks like. That's real death, right? But then Luke, we see, is fucking dead. He gets wiped out on the rocks at the end of this book. But he's not dead, right? And once you start to play that game, you run into the problem of having to write future deaths, if you want them to have emotional impact, in a way that comes with an explanation of whether or not it is real death or not, because you've taken the bite of death out by having so many people die and not die, right? Emerson says Sally didn't die in book 1. Hades kidnapped her. That's the only reason that Sally was able to come back. Right. No, 100%, Emerson. But with Bianca, we don't see what happens to her body, right? Like, they go up to the mech, they rip it apart, and it's just empty. Like, Bianca isn't there. And so the idea that we should assume she's dead when we've seen that a god can kidnap somebody from space, there's no reason to assume Bianca dies in that scene. There's a reason for the kids to think she might be dead. But Percy's response to that should have been, oh, one of the gods got her. Right? Like, Percy, they're not being a body. To Percy, his first thought should be, oh, I've seen this before. This is what happened to my mom. Why would he assume death? Right? Like, and then we find out that she's Hades' child. Like, can children of Hades die? Right? And that's where you have to, if you're going to be inconsistent about death, which I think these books very much are, you then have to come up with a way when you are writing deaths to explain to the audience which one it is. If you want it to have an emotional impact, then we need to know that it's real. But I'm not going to give you my emotional, like, highs or lows if I'm sitting there being like, so one of the gods took her body. Okay, because she's a child and they don't want children to die. Great. Ares and Aphrodite, we're just here. Like, the gods are aware that we're here. There's no reason for me to assume death in that moment. And I do think it's why the Bianca death didn't, like, hit for me and got confusing. And then Binky says, it's okay. Rick handed us a death barometer, so going forward we get explicitly told. Good. I think that he has to, because I do think that it is... the Bianca one is just... It's a confusing scene. Grover acts like an idiot. Bianca's stealing from a god, even though if I was a kid and I was on a deadly mission and someone was like, don't steal from the junkyard, I get that she wants to give her brother a toy, but, like, fuck, girl. Like, just... Yeah, I get it. She's a child. Like, children are children. I understand why she did it, but... I'm more upset with how Grover behaves in that scene than Bianca, right? Yeah, it's just interesting. Oh my god, we've been moving so slowly. These full book reviews are tough. I feel like I don't do a great job talking in order because I respond to chat and chat wants to have the conversation that chat wants to have. So we just end up talking about the books. I hope this is okay. Let's just throw the book up in order and then we can just talk about it. I feel like that's what I should do at the top of these. I should just explain the events. I should do a little bit of a recap, and then we should just talk. I don't think going chapter by chapter necessarily always makes sense in these solo book reviews, because I don't have someone to bounce off of, except chat. And so I kind of go down whatever road you guys go down, and then I don't know. I don't know if this podcast is a good podcast, if I'm being honest. I just really love doing it. Youngstar says, I think that's the difference between reading these books as a kid and an adult, because as a kid, all these deaths felt real to me and very much impacted me. Oh, I understand that. Yeah, if I was 12, I would be having a very different experience. I want to be clear about that, right? If I was 12 years old, I would be having a wildly different experience of these books. And so my reading it is my experience of it as a 33-year-old man who loves fantasy and loves these worlds and wants to, enjoy them. But also, thinks about things in a much different way than I did at 12, right? You broke down to Bianca's death when you first read it. Interesting. I think what I find interesting about that is, why did you assume that she was dead, given the previous 2 books? Here's the thing about Bianca's death. Zoe's death, and Zoe's death to me is fantastic. I cried. Legitimately. Like, I cried thinking about Zoe's death. The aftermath of it. I think Zoe's death is so well written. But Bianca's death to me felt so much like when Sally's body disappeared in the first book that I didn't assume like that. And I don't know. Maybe that's just how my brain works, but I'm like, oh, if you show me a power in a book, I assume that power happens again, right? And so for me, her body just being gone felt so much like Sally in book 1. If it weren't for Sally in book 1, I would have viewed Bianca's death far more as a death, right? But it just felt so similar. Them being attacked by this creature that they don't know. The creature has the person, and then the person disappears. It felt like it was hearkening back to the Sally scene with the Minotaur so hard to me that I was that's kind of where it feels. It reminded me so much of that as a kid. But I'm saying as a kid I would have looked for that signpost as well, right? I think that for me, and this might be an autism thing, honestly. If you show me one thing in a story, my brain looks for that pattern again in the future, right? Like my brain really works on pattern recognition. That's why I have a high IQ, right? Because IQ is people think IQ is intelligence, but IQ is actually just like pattern recognition and problem solving. It's one kind of intelligence. It just happens to be the one that like I'm good at, right? My autistic brain does pattern recognition and problem solving well. It's always been something that a skill that I have. I'm lacking in so many other kinds of intelligence. I want to be very clear, particularly emotional intelligence. And so for me, the way that even as a kid I would have responded to that is seeing the pattern of what happened to Sally happening to Bianca, and that would have been my assumption even then. I have Asperger's, so my autism is more social than mental for me, so I can see that. Yeah, Victor, I was diagnosed with Asperger's too, but I've been told that doesn't exist anymore, and that we're all just lumped into autism spectrum disorder now, so... But yeah, no, I was diagnosed with Asperger's back when that was still a common diagnosis for autism back in 2011. Yeah, wild. I joke though that because they don't, a lot of people don't use the term Asperger's anymore because of a Nazi or something. I joke that I was cured. I was diagnosed with Asperger's, but it doesn't exist anymore. So, and Emerson also has Asperger's. Look at us. Wednesday morning. We got all the Aspies on the internet talking about a children's book. Emerson says, this isn't set in world, but I've personally always seen it as Hades and other gods can only kidnap mortals in this way, not demigods. I mean, yeah, that's definitely a headcanon. I don't think that that's established. I also don't think that Hades could have kidnapped Bianca in hindsight because the thing is Hephaestus's mech, right? Like the Minotaur was working for Hades, which is why I think that if Hades could have saved Bianca here, it would have only been if the mech was Hades's mech instead of being Hephaestus's. But Hephaestus could have saved Bianca. But why would Hephaestus save Bianca? Hephaestus doesn't want more children of the big three running around. Like, I don't know. Okay, plot of the book. So this book is about... We're what? An hour and 20 minutes in. We're talking about the plot. After the cliff... Oh, Annabeth and the Manticore go over the side of the cliff in the fight. The hunters of Artemis show up. They're shooting their silver arrows. Artemis is there. Artemis is like, hey, you guys go back to camp. Annabeth falls off the cliff. Annabeth is now lost. She's gone. Then it's very sad. We all go back to camp. At camp, Percy really wants to go find Annabeth, obviously. Other people are like, I don't know, man. I don't know why they're like that. It does definitely feel like you guys should just, I don't know, fucking do the thing instead of waiting for a quest, but whatever. So then we play Capture the Flag against the hunters, because it is tradition. What a dumb tradition. Why does this make sense for anybody? The Capture the Flag scene, it drives me fucking crazy, okay? If you're the kids of the gods, and you're actually children, which they are children, why would you want to compete against hunters who are thousands of years old and have thousands of years of experience? Chiron is like, oh, the hunters win again. Yeah, of course they win again. The hunters are thousands of years old. If you're the hunters, why are you comfortable beating up on these children? You're thousands of years old. Like, it would be like someone being like, hey, we're gonna go play paintball. Do you want to go play paintball with a bunch of 12-year-olds? And I'm like, no, I don't want to go beat the shit out of a bunch of 12-year-olds. What do I get out of that? I understand that the hunters have physically not aged. They're all eternal virgins. I get that. Like, I do understand that they are children who have forsworn men, which is very funny. the like you have to be celibate part of it. I just asking a 12-year-old to make the choice at 12 to give up on her brother and the idea of romance in the future is hilarious. But then these creatures, like, Zoe is thousands of years old. She has thousands of years of experience. She's been hunting creatures since Hercules literally existed. And she's like, haha, I beat these 12-year-olds at Capture the Flag. And I'm like, good for you, I guess. I don't know why you're so fucking proud of that. Like, I just don't, I would be embarrassed. I would be like, oh my god, we beat up on the children again. Well, they are ancient, the Greeks, so children can get it, true. Get them young so they don't mature enough to know otherwise. Oh, 100%. No, I understand why Artemis does it, because she needs her, she needs to be surrounded by her virgins so that they can hunt creatures. The Hunters of Artemis thing was a cool idea. I wish the book had established why it exists a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like, in bringing Bianca into the Hunters of Artemis, I wish the pitch that the book made to Bianca was like the purpose of it, rather than just being like, you'll be immortal and you can't have sex ever. And Bianca's like, oh, immortality, dope. Like, I wish particularly because Talia joins at the end, I wish the book had just made a stronger argument for why this existed. Like, what its purpose was. And I think that would have sold me on it a little bit better. But immediately I think the hunters are dumb because Zoe takes Bianca. I don't like this book. I want to be really clear. This book is fun. I don't like this book as much as the first two. Like, I don't think this book is good as the first two. I think this book, particularly because they bring Bianca with no training, for her, it was running from responsibility. Sure. Marius says, it feels like the purpose was to get Talia out of the way. Oh, 100%. It does feel like the hunters exist to solve the problem of Talia existing, rather than exist to exist and become a solution for Talia, right? Like, it feels like they were created in this book to solve a problem, not because they are, not because they would have existed on their own. Victor Sana says, oh, that's because it's a Greek myth thing. It's not formalized like it is in the books, but Artemis had myths of posse of huntress maidens. No, 100%. I'm fully on board with Artemis having a posse of maidens. I'm on board with the idea of the hunters. I just think that there's a version of their introduction that is like, when the gods go to war, the huntresses appear, right? When the gods go to war, like, if the huntresses appearing had been an omen of how bad things were getting, right? You would have solved two problems. The first problem being the like weirdness of Zoe's speech being, Youngstar, you don't have to delete that comment. I read it. You're allowed to say that other people like this book more than the first two. If you had introduced it as a like Artemis's huntresses always show up when things are getting dark, right? Then their appearance becomes an omen. It explains why Zoe feels like she hasn't been alive for like 150 years, right? Her like Shakespearean language thing feels weird because she is constantly experiencing life. It's not like she's like living on Olympus kind of chilling in between. The book kind of establishes that they're always kind of going around hunting, but she doesn't feel like she's experienced anything. And you would also have Talia like joining up because things are happening and the huntresses are destined to be a part of them. Mary says, or if was known that other gods had followers than just Artemis. Yeah, that would have worked too, right? There's just a version of this where, oh, the hunters are here. That's actually a bad omen, right? And the capture the flag scene then becomes, whenever the huntresses appear, we do this capture the flag thing because the huntresses and the demigods are going to have to work together because we're going to war. And then the capture the flag scene becomes about the huntresses and the demigods bonding with each other because things are getting bad. And we need these two factions to like each other. And so we do the capture the flag thing to bond them together. You set up why they're here so that at the end of the book, Talia's like, look, the huntresses are fighting this war. You want me to go back to school for the semester. I don't want to go back to school until things get bad again. I want to be part of this war. I know I'm still a kid, but I want to be a part of this. I'm going to join the hunters, right? You would give them purpose. The book's version of this is that they just kind of show up just to show up. And then Zoe brings Bianca along for seemingly no reason. Bianca kind of just dies because she's 12 and an idiot and has zero training. Bianca offers zero to the quest other than being a puzzle to solve about where she was. And so you just kind of have this like 12-year-old girl who's there to be a puzzle and then die. And then Zoe dies. And you're like, oh, okay. So the huntresses are bad at their job. The huntresses are really good at beating children at capture the flag, I guess. And then Talia joins them so that she gets frozen so that she doesn't turn 16. And like, that's all they kind of are. They're not competent. They're not helpful. Zoe, despite being thousands of years old, her only useful skill is driving. And they kind of just exist so that there's a reason why Percy isn't allowed to go on the quest again, even though we just did that last book. And so this book repeats the plot line of Percy not going on the quest, but then going on the quest anyway. Also, love Blackjack. We haven't mentioned Blackjack yet. Blackjack flies Percy around. Blackjack fucking rocks. The voice actor doing Blackjack in the audiobook, hilarious. Boss? Yeah, boss, we're gonna... Like, it's like fucking... He's doing like an Ed Wynn impression. Like, I don't know if anyone... I reference Ed Wynn so much. And I just... It's one of those things where like, it's such an iconic voice. I don't know if people know who that is. And so, yeah, the hunters fundamentally in this book did not work for me. And I liked the book a lot more around them. Like, Percy and Talia's relationship is far more interesting and nuanced to me than anything the hunters do. The idea of them having to get to San Francisco and that the, like, Kronos is... Edwin, he talks like this. And it's kind of like the voice, you know. Oh, you know, he's an old performer man, and he had a voice that was like this, and it's just a very iconic voice. It's old-timey performance shit. It doesn't matter. But yeah, so like this book doesn't work for me nearly as much as the first two. Even though like the highs of this book I think are better. Like I think the action scene on top of the mountain is really well done. I think the fights are cool. As insane as I think it is, Annabeth's dad showing up to give them air cover in an old warjet, shooting Annabeth's melted down weapons collection is such a wild ending, but it is very exciting. And if they cut that from the show, I will lose my fucking mind. If the show does not do Annabeth's dad being like, sorry, honey, I found all these celestial weapons in your bedroom when you ran away. And so I was like, maybe I can turn them into bullets for my plane. Which implies that Annabeth's dad moved either a giant shipment of weapons across the country or a giant shipment of bullets across the country. And like big, like plane bullets, not like little things. Yeah. I did like Ares' curse coming into effect was all right. Yeah, no, and like the moment where Percy holds the sky is so sick, right? Like that's so cool. And finding out that Annabeth held the sky, like really cool moment for those characters. Percy and Annabeth in the dance was such a cute scene. Percy and Talia's kind of arguing back and forth really worked for me. You know that the show won't spend the money for air combat. To Emerson, they fucking have to. They have to keep the fun shit. If you're good, they have to do the fun stuff. It's exhausting that they keep cutting the fun stuff. I really liked another scene that can't happen because the show is changing things for no fucking reason. Percy. Percy promises Nico that he's going to find a way to go on the quest. So he does go on the quest. He follows them to DC. And he sneaks into a Smithsonian museum where the general, that we later find out is Atlas, who is holding the sky, or is supposed to be holding the sky, but isn't currently holding the sky because Annabeth... No, at this point, Artemis is holding the sky. Atlas is reanimating skeletons from the Smithsonian to hunt them. Very cool idea. Very fun. Fucking 10 out of 10, loved it. Percy finds out about this because he uses Annabeth's cap to sneak into the room and listen in on this. And he like finds out about this plan. And this scene is great. It's like a really fun scene where Percy learns very important information about the plot of this book and season. But in the show, Percy loses the hat on the cruise ship for no fucking reason. It just falls out of his pocket. And the camera is like, boom, on the hat. And it's just a change. It's just a change. And I don't understand. Like it's a change that I'm like, they wear the hat multiple times in the first third of this book. Why? Just why? Why would you do this? It drives me fucking crazy. Like it's like it's so random. And I spent the first half of the book being like, no, I thought there was a reason why he lost the hat on the show. And then the book keeps being like, and then this is the scene where Percy wears Annabeth's hat. And then this is the scene where Percy wears Annabeth's hat. And you're like, but why are you making your job harder? You can't just adapt the books anymore. You have to write new scenes where different things happen. You didn't have to do that. Oh, man. I feel like I'm crazy. So they find out, he runs into them. Everyone's pissed that he's there, even though they're supposed to bring 5, but they can't bring 5 because the other hunters they were supposed to bring got pranked by the Stoll brothers, who put acid on a shirt. Not funny at all. I was like deeply disappointed in Chiron for not coming down like a fucking menace on those kids for that. That bit went too far to me for Chiron to like not do anything about it. So Percy, so they were supposed to be 5. They're not 5. They probably said they needed to be 5. They also said that one of them was going to be lost. One would be killed by their parent. So we start heading. We start heading west because we have to get to San Francisco, and we ride a pig for a while. Pan talks to us through coffee beans at one point. That was pretty fun. We hang out with... Apollo flies us to the camp. Apollo is in this book a lot. He's referenced. He's around. His chariot's important. Apollo as a character is very fun. I like how chill he is about things. He feels very godly in a way that I think is fun. He feels like a different kind of god than the other gods that have been in these books so far. But his like casualness about the situation, but being a little bit more helpful and like dressing up to be helpful, I enjoyed throughout the book. Victor Desana says that is a ref how Heracles died, so it's a mythic reference that doesn't translate to modern values. Wait, which part, Victor Desana? I think I moved on. I'm not sure the coffee had anything to do with that. I don't think it did either at Arzu, but I really loved the idea that because it happened because of coffee, the satyrs back in Half-Blood Hill at the end of the book are all like fucking vibrating on caffeine as they're trying to recreate this to try and get more information on Pan. Like the satyrs viewing it as a sign. The satyrs viewing it as a sign that like coffee is the secret to where Pan is the sort of like joke that really works for me in these books. And then being like, oh my god, we need to buy a fucking Nespresso. We gotta buy an Nespresso. There should be a graveyard at camp with how deadly the pranks are. Yeah, absolutely. Death says the acid on the shirt is a reference to Heracles. Oh, that's how Heracles died. Oh, interesting. I did not know that. Cool. If that's how Heracles died, they're referencing a murder. Like, if I was Chiron, I'd be like, hey guys, you can't prank people with murder. That's not allowed. I do have to punish you. We cannot murder people at Half-Blood Hill. At some point they get to the junkyard. The junkyard scene happens. Ares and Aphrodite have a conversation with Percy, where Aphrodite is basically like, you're gonna go save your one true love. Good luck, kid. And then Bianca dies because she tries to steal an action figure. They go to the Hoover Dam, where they get attacked by the creatures that Atlas summoned at the Smithsonian. Percy hides in a bathroom thanks to a girl who's weird. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know what the fuck was going on with that scene yet. That girl must come back, right? There's no way that's the only scene that girl is in. I'm assuming she's going to be relevant to future books. Because it just felt her name was said too many times. If that makes sense. That felt like a foreshadowing thing for her to be relevant later. But she is immortal, so I don't really know. I don't know how she fits into this. But if that girl never comes back, I will genuinely be shocked. The Hoover Dam action sequences are all fantastic. I really, really like them. Partially because I've gone on that tour. And so there was something really fun about... for sure, she saw too much, very Ariadne coded. Yeah, there's something going on there, Pinky. I really like the Hoover Dam sequence, somewhat for the same reason why I enjoyed the St. Louis Arch sequence in the first book, in that they're both tour experiences that my mom took me on as a kid. And so the way that, other than the water not being that close to the arch, Rick Riordan does a really good job of writing in the way the actual tour goes if you go and take it. And or at least he writes close enough that my brain is able to remember the experience that I had at the Hoover Dam. Because it might not be exactly what is real, right? Who knows what he's changed, but it's close enough that I was able to be nostalgic for the experience that I had there as a kid. And I think that he's really successful at that. If you have been to the monuments he writes about, in general, his writing does a really good job of feeling like that place. And yeah, there's a long sequence of damn jokes that Zoe doesn't understand because she's like either 4,000 or like 19 with no culture. The statues definitely don't fly on the regular tour. Not yet, but with AI, with the power of AI, they're going to have some way to bring people to the Hoover Dam because there's not going to be any water passing through it soon, so it's not going to be much of a dam. It's literally just going to be a stone structure that stands between two dry pools that used to be lakes. Don't worry, that's not tragic and sad at all. I still laugh about the fact that he was so surprised that the water was not directly under the arch. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Hilarious. So funny. Like, because in his brain, he thought that the arch was over the water. And it definitely is not. But yeah, like, so we go to the Hoover Dam. We meet this crazy girl. We get saved by Zeus's statue. Or I don't know if there's Zeus. I'm not clear on whether or not Zeus or Hera is the one that actually saves them. In my mind, I definitely think it's Zeus, but it would be kind of fun if we find out later that it's Hera, because the statues are related to both Zeus and Hera, right? And so it would be kind of fun if it was Hera, if Rick Riordan's version of Hera doesn't hate Zeus's illegitimate children as much as she does in Greek mythology, but I don't think that's actually what it is. I do think it was Zeus. And so from there, they make their way over to San Francisco, where they run into Bessie, who's been following them, and Grover rides Bessie out of the plot back to Camp Half-Blood. Hera save a child of Zeus? Oh, no, I totally get that. I just think that if you're writing for a modern audience, having, like, because so many people have stepmoms now, Arzu, if Rick wanted to adapt Hera to the modern world in a way that didn't make her like an evil stepmom, I could see why that would have value in a children's story, right? In 2007, like, I was on my second stepdad, right? And both my stepdads are great. My first one, him and my mom didn't work out, but I'm still, I'm very close with him, and he's my brother's father. And so he's still a part of my life. He's still at Christmas dinner. And my current stepdad, who my mom's married to now, is the man who is the reason I'm the man I am. You know what I mean? Like, Kim is, to me, everything. I love the man, and I model how I treat people after him, right? He was the male role model in my life. I think that because being a step parent is a different thing now than it has been in the past, writing Hera in a different way for a modern audience would be an interesting way to tell kids that, like, your step parents don't hate you. You know what I mean? You can't have a good relationship with a step parent. I'm not saying that he's going to do that. I'm just, as someone who is a child of step parents, was a child with many step parents, I do think that we can adapt some of these stories for those kids if we want to. You don't have to. And I don't know if Rick Riordan's going to. Hera hasn't said anything yet. Pinky Armando says, I don't think Rick sees the godly parents as real parents, so the step parent would be human partner side. True. And we do kind of get that. We get San Francisco. We send Grover off out of the plot so that we don't have to worry about Bessie for the final fight. And we go see Annabeth's dad and Annabeth's stepmom. And Annabeth's stepmom fucking rocks. She's chill as hell. Annabeth's dad is also, like, seemingly really cool. He's a big ol' fucking nerd. You can understand why a goddess of wisdom would fall for him, because he's very intelligent. And I really, really loved... Death says, thought on Annabeth's father and stepmother and the representation of parents that aren't bad people, just unequipped to have kids. What's weird is that it feels like they are equipped to have kids. Not her dad. Her mom does feel like her mom's doing a good job. Weirdly. And maybe like, that's a more recent thing for them or whatever. But I do agree with that. Like, I think that they're nice. And the fact that he shows up in the plane for her, right? He shows up for his daughter as best he can. And sometimes that's all being a parent is just doing your best. There's no right way to be a parent, right? There's just different ways of being a parent. And the book makes it apparent. See what I did there? That there's different ways of being a parent, and I think that there's a beauty in the way that Annabeth's dad does try and show up here, and does kind of accomplish that. And I really liked him showing up at the end. I thought it was absurd. And when he's like, "Yeah, you left weapons at the house, so I just decided to melt them down," I was like, "That's fucked." If my mom was like, "I melted down your swords," I'd be furious. I would be so mad. You melted down my fucking god weapons? That was a gift from Zeus, Dad. And so we get a rather beautiful scene where Zoe is like, "Oh no, the Germans were not that close to the river." And he's like a model of this war that he's recreated in miniature so that he can write about how these certain planes impacted this one fight. And Zoe's like, "Oh no, I was there. That's not how that happened." And I'm like, can you imagine being a scholar and you've been studying your whole life, and then some like 13-year-old looking ass girl shows up to your office and was like, "I fought in that war. Everything you've spent your entire life getting your PhD on, 100% incorrect. I do not have time to elaborate. Goodbye." The maddening part about it wouldn't be new information, right? Scientists fucking love new information because we want the truth, right? Like, so much of why we write and why we continue to analyze is because we're trying to figure out the truth of the past, even though we can't, right? It's impossible. We can't watch it, but we're trying. And so the new information would be so great, but it's the new information followed up by, "I don't have time to elaborate, your daughter's in danger." And he's like, "Fuck, you're right. You've got to go. Please come back." And then Zoe fucking dies. And he's like, "No, the only person. She came into my life, told me that my entire life's work was incorrect. My entire life's work is incorrect. And then that girl died an hour later without being able to tell me why." This is the worst day of Annabeth's dad's life. It's just the worst day of his life. He finds out that there is someone who can tell him what he has been working his whole life to know, and then that child is immediately murdered. What a nightmare. Like, what a fucking nightmare for the man. Mostly because a child, I want to be clear, mostly because a child died. More so than the information. But the information would not be an insignificant part of it for him. So they leave that, they go up the mountain, and there's a dragon protecting a tree. Percy, throughout the whole book, Percy dreams about things, either Annabeth, or he dreams of being Theseus, Hercules. He dreams of being Hercules, meeting Zoe when she was protecting this tree, and Riptide, the sword, is Zoe's power that she's passed on that you pass on to Hercules and has made its way down. So Anaklusmos is her power. And so in this garden scene with the dragon, throughout the book, Percy's been trying to prove that he isn't Hercules, that he is a better person, that he's not just going to leave her. And by the time we get to the dragon scene, she does believe him. And I think that the growth of that throughout the book is really well done. I think Rick Riordan does an excellent job of telling the story of Percy warming Zoe's cold heart to the idea that men can have some value, which I'm not totally convinced of, but I'm glad that Zoe gets there. If one who saw it is still alive, there could be more. He'll find another mortal child with the information he needs. Pinky, I love the idea that Annabeth's dad starts hunting the hunters. Not to, like, hunt them, but just to ask them questions. He's like, "I know the hunters of Artemis are out there." He starts, like, a podcast about, like, trying to find the hunters of Artemis. Jesus. So, we get... Zoe distracts the dragon so we can get up the mountain. And we find our way up to the fight with Atlas, Luke, Annabeth, chained up there. Artemis is holding up the sky. And the fight kind of kicks off pretty quick. Zoe does show up. She looks a little bit injured. Not sure what happened there. And they all start fighting. Percy realizes pretty quickly that the only way to participate is, or to survive, I guess, is if they have a god on their side. And so he trades places with Artemis so that Artemis can go fight Atlas. And it's a great... The fight is great. The way in which... The Talia Luke side of the fight is a little less interesting to me, because it does feel like the explanation for why Talia is able to fight with Luke, I guess if you just say like Luke wanted to get Talia to join, it feels like Luke should have been able to overpower Talia pretty quick and then like force her to join that way or something. But the Artemis Atlas fight is incredible, and the description of it is so much fun, leading to Artemis tricking Atlas into falling into place so that Percy can, hand him back the sky. The sequence of that is so well done. It's really exciting, so invigorating. I thought this was one of Rick Riordan's better action sequences overall, and my ability to visualize it as it is happening was just something else. The fight ultimately leads, though, to Luke being thrown off of a cliff, reminiscent of Annabeth at the beginning of the book, and Percy looking down and seeing Luke's body broken on the rocks. And it's a very violent, very rough sequence of events. But as he's looking down, he sees the armies of Luke that they've been working to build up in all the time that Percy was, going to middle school, are marching up the hill. And it's about to get really bad. They're going to get overrun by the armies of Kronos. But a plane shows up, and Percy's dad starts strafing the monsters with celestial bronze. And so we kind of go back over, and we're in this moment of safety, and Zoe is dying. And we realize that the wound that she took was poisoned, and she was the one in the prophecy killed by her parent. And the scene of Artemis losing Zoe is really well done. It's really quite beautifully done, and it made me very emotional. And I thought with Apollo's chariot and with the chariot, it's Artemis's chariot, losing her in the chariot, I thought was just a really, really successful scene that was night and day to me with how I felt after Bianca's death, because I was just trying to figure out if it was real or not. This moment felt so genuine and was written in a way that was very impactful. And I really loved in these books where the gods' connection with the humans has been a little bit nebulous in terms of whether it's an emotional connection or not. Artemis is so clearly moved by losing Zoe, right? It is not difficult to understand that Artemis has a genuine connection to her hunters that you could say is lacking with the connections between the demigods and the other gods in this world. And I think that this was a really successful moment at giving a different personality. Much like I feel like Apollo has a very different personality from the other gods in this book, I thought Artemis felt like she had a very different connection to humanity than the other gods in this book. Now, granted, it's her people, right? And Zoe's not even a human, so I guess that doesn't really count. But the way in which the gods are not a monolith is excellent, and I think well done. This leads them back to Olympus, where there's a meeting of the gods. This meeting has been talked about the whole time. Part of the reason why we had to save Artemis this whole time is because Artemis is going to be one of the gods on the side of this council of gods that is going to lead them towards action. And so without Artemis, the gods would have ended up more like the American House and Senate, where just nothing happens. And so we save her. We go to the meeting, and Bessie is hanging out in a bubble of water. Percy's like, "Don't kill Bessie, please." And we find out that Bessie is a power source where if one of the child of the big three killed Bessie, they would get the power to take out the gods. So Bessie isn't actually going to kill the gods itself. It's that if one of the big three were to sacrifice, or if one of the children of the big three were to sacrifice Bessie, they would have the power to destroy Olympus. And Percy's like, "I'm not going to do that." And Talia's like, "I'm going to join the Hunters, so I literally can't. I'm going to go be immortal, so I will be 15 forever." Which leads to some really weird questions about, what does it mean to grow up? Is it just physical age? I don't know. Also, the book does set up that Talia, despite going into the tree at 12, aged slowly in the tree, so she is a week from being 15 when the book happens. I don't know. It's not quite a rate of like half. Well, maybe it's close to half. Maybe she was almost 13. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I am a hunter now, so I will never turn 16. Feels weird because you still get older just because your body is stagnant. But I guess the prophecy is only related to your body's age and not how old you actually are. There's just a weird element of this that tries to establish that your body's age is the only thing that matters to prophecies. And I don't know that I agree with that as a concept. I was under the impression that the Talia thing was just going to be that, like, she was a tree when she turned 16, and so the prophecy can't be about her. I thought that's where they were going with it, but instead they've made it into... Rick Riordan has made it into a thing where prophecies that mention age now are about how old your physical body is. And that can be stopped. And... I don't know. Victor says, I mean, did it seem to you that Zoe was as mature as her true age and not still just a kid? Victor, I don't know. I don't know. I don't... maturity is an interesting thing, right? And to say that maturity comes from how old your body is and not from new information, from having more experience, is strange, right? And so the idea that your maturity would never change, but maturity isn't this fixed thing, right? I lost people when I was young, and so I was much more mature at a younger age than people that hadn't lost people. But it was experiencing death and loss that made me grow up very fast. I was much more mature in elementary school than other kids because my parents got divorced, and I had to deal with that. And I took on the responsibility of taking care of my younger brothers, or my younger brother and sister now, because I was the one who was with them all the time. And I took on, I felt like I was responsible for them in a way that made me mature faster than kids around me. And it was remarked upon throughout, particularly but until I hit puberty, how seriously I took some things and how I responded to things like that and how responsible I was, because it was about my experiences, not necessarily growing older, right? And so I think that if you tie maturity to something physical as opposed to experiential, you're saying that you think that maturity is like a physical state of being in your brain, and I don't agree with that on a fundamental level. I think maturity is built upon experience and experiencing life. And so I think that what I'm getting at, and because I do agree with you, right, in some level, I think that your enjoyment of this book is going to hinge on whether or not the Hunters of Artemis work for you. And they kind of didn't as a concept for me. And I think that it's what got in the way of my enjoyment of this book over the previous two, was that the concept of the Hunters felt like a thing to deal with Talia at the end. And so they never really made sense to me. Because I don't think that being 4,000 years old, but not having matured because, well, your brain is that of a 13-year-old person, I don't think that 13-year-old people are consistently one maturity. I think that you can meet 13-year-olds that feel like they're 40, right? Victor Sana says, likewise, there is plenty of adults who are mature but don't act like it. You're right, we can't measure that, but that is not what's being measured by the prophecy. It's not asking how well you are at. Oh, right. No, but but that's why the prophecy is saying, like, it doesn't matter how long you've been alive. It matters how old your physical body technically is on some weird God scale. That the gods are able to look at you and be like, oh yeah, you're a week from your 16th birthday, even though it's not close to her birthday. But the tree aged her body to the point where it is, and Apollo just knows that, right? Like, it's not even like her actual birthday, Victor Desana. Apollo just looks at her and uses God power at Talia, and uses God powers to be like, oh, your body aged to the point where your new birthday is a week from today. It's not like, because if Talia had woken up and been like, oh, that's January or December 22nd, that's my birthday, right? Apollo is just like, your new birthday based on the physical age your body aged up to in the tree is now this, because your body, like, that's where this book gets into the nebulousness of your birthday's just different now. Whereas, like, birthday, I don't think of birthday as being particularly all that important to, like, how much your body's grown, right? And the book just puts this hard line on that I just found a little bit strange. And so, you're not wrong at all, right? I'm not trying to say that you're wrong and I'm right. I'm saying that my perspective on maturity being this experiential thing, and that we do change regardless of where our brains are at based on what we experience, left the Huntresses of Apollo feeling underbaked for me, and thus kind of dragging this whole book down a little bit. He did a child to tree age conversion? Sure. I think that if the Huntresses work for you in that sense, I think this book will feel a lot stronger than it does for me, where I felt like the Huntresses felt underbaked kind of universally, and so it kind of held the book back. I enjoy a lot of this book. I had a lot of fun with it, but the concept of the hunters and the way they're handled was the biggest detriment. And Zoe bringing Bianca with no training was those were the biggest detriments to me in terms of my enjoyment of the book as a whole. Whereas the stuff about Annabeth, Percy, and Talia, I generally liked quite a bit more. And so, I'm not saying that you're wrong, Victor Sana. Like, you're saying what happened. Apollo did just diagnose a new age for her. But that felt more like the book trying to just force a conversation about the Great Prophecy than it did like a thing that actually made sense to me about the world. Then it did make the world feel more lived in. It felt like, we just got to come up with something here. And it just wasn't my favorite decision for the book to make in regards to that. Pinky Armando says, I think the two age immaturity are different concepts. Sure, yeah. Atalia's physical arbitrary age matters because prophecy. Huntresses being immature is because they are a cult, rarely interacting with the world. That's fair enough. Yeah, that is an explanation that does work. It doesn't help that they didn't work for me, my reading experience, right? It's a fun book. I don't think it has great world building. I agree with that. Hippo, I think that's where I'm coming to, right? I think it's a fun book. I think that what holds it back from being a great book is that the world building feels a little bit weak, in my opinion. I felt like the first two did a better job of helping me feel like I was going on a like fun adventure with friends. And this one felt a little bit more like it was trying to be like, and here's all these things. And the adventure is less fun. And it's less of a like fun road trip with friends. And it's more like, here's a sequence of things that explain concepts that exist in this world. And my enjoyment of the book was limited by the fact that some of those concepts didn't work for me. Yeah. First two had World War II as world building. Sure, but like the World War II thing, as wild as that is, it made sense. Here's the thing, Victor. The World War II thing is a crazy choice, right? It's a crazy choice to put into a kid's book. That like, oh, like Percy exists but shouldn't exist because World War II is Zeus and Hades' fault. Wild choice, but like makes enough sense in this world. The problem with making World War II be world building is that like what does 9/11 mean in this world? Right? Like what does Vietnam mean in this world? Because you've now said that 9/11 happened, Vietnam happened, Korea happened. You've said that the wild thing is, it's one thing to say like World War II happened and then the gods stop interacting in war. Okay. And maybe that's just what it is. Like maybe the gods had nothing to do with Korea and Vietnam. But 9/11 happened in New York, which is where the seat of Olympus is, and like, you know, if Rick Riordan in the next book were to be like, the planes were actually supposed to hit the Empire State Building, but Zeus redirected them, I would be like, oh, yeah, that makes enough sense given the world building of this world. It's still a crazy thing to bring up, but wild. Ultimately, like, I think that Amboss says at least Watchmen had the Vietnam War changed differently because of its characters. Wild to have everything happen the same. That's what's weird, Amboss. No. That's what's weird. It's not that World War II happened. It's that World War II happened as we remember it, despite the fact that they were a part of it. Right? And that the response to World War II was that the world, despite the fact that the gods are interacting, the demigods are going around doing stuff, the world fundamentally still got to 9/11, and 9/11 happened the way that it did. Enough so that a girl who would have been 5 when 9/11 happened wants to build a monument to 9/11. Yeah. To be fair, ancient Greece was conquered a few times, so saying how much the gods go to protect their home is up in the air. That's a good point. They're not great. The gods aren't really good at their jobs. Interestingly. Yeah. I think that this book is a little bit clunky. And I think the reason why it's clunky is this book had to be a transition point for Percy and everyone to be involved in... Percy has to be involved in the war in a different way moving forward, right? And so we needed to transition away from the like, oh, it's summer and we're going on an adventure, into this is more of a like full-time part of Percy's life. And I think that there is a little bit of clunk in that transition. And I don't think it's handled as smoothly as I would have liked. But at the same time, I do think it accomplishes the goal of getting us to the point where we can now move towards more of a ongoing Percy being a part of the war element than after book 2, where it just kind of felt a little bit more nebulous. Percy is now more involved. We've gone to a meeting of the gods. We are at the point now where our main characters are getting close to being old enough to actually like interact with the world in a more real way. And so I do think this book accomplishes a lot of its goals. I just don't think it is as successful as a novel as the first 2 are. I think those are both tighter and a little bit more fun. And, you know, because they don't have death in them, they're a little bit more like kiddie. Marius says it should be less going to summer camp and that they're on leave going back to war. Well, I do think they need to go back to the summer camp, right? Like, Marius, I think that they need to go back to Half-Blood Hill and start training and start working together and start building platoons. Like, at some point, they've got to... at some point, these characters have to start working on, like, being an army. Because we've now had multiple scenes where they've seen that the bad guys have an army. And I think it's why the show pitted the two sides against each other as armies earlier than the books do. Because if Luke is building an army, the other demigods need an army as well. One of the things that I am a little confused by in this book is Titus. We do see Titus a little bit. Titus is working on making thousands of swords for Olympus. I don't know who those swords are for, weirdly. like, I don't know who I'm still a little confused on, like, who is fighting on the good side. And it feels like that should have been somewhat established at the end of this book at the meeting of the gods. They say, like, I guess we're going to war. But it seems up until this point, the demigods have been the only people that the gods send out to do that shit. And there aren't 1,000 demigods. And so I wish the book had done a little bit more to establish why we need thousands of swords and who these thousands of people are. Because it's not going to be mortals. It's not going to be demigods. There's only like 300 demigods maybe? So is it... There's other myth things out there. But like do the myth things wield swords, Pinky? Hades, Zeus, and Poseidon have kingdoms. They do have people that follow them, but yeah, it's not established. But isn't Zeus's kingdom New York? I think that this is where the urban fantasy element of Percy Jackson unwinds a little bit. It's like, how spoiler do you want, lol? No, because I'm gonna read book 4 in April, right? Or in March. Yeah. Well, we're gonna read book 4 in March, and then we'll read book 5 in April. So, Zeus's kingdom is the sky. So, like, pigeons? Like, who the fuck is fighting for Zeus in the sky? Zeus has birds, and he's got lightning bolts. I'm assuming... I know this is all going to be established later. I guess that it's going to be established later. I just think some of that... Canadian geese, hey, that's a fucking army hippo. I wish some of the work of how this world functioned had been foreshadowed by the end of book 3. I wish the huntresses had been, like, foreshadowed in a camp scene in an earlier book. I do sometimes feel like Rick Riordan introduces things as they are necessary, which makes them feel more convenient than they would be if he introduced them a little bit earlier. This book kind of brings things up as you need to know them, which as a child is probably beneficial, as you're like, oh, that's cool. But as an adult, you're like, oh, it's convenient that showed up right there. And I think that might be a difference between the like childhood reading experience of these books and the adulthood reading experience of these books. Pinky Romano says, I think the huntresses are also supposed to show that the gods have their own like little armies and stuff. I think that's true, Pinky, but also we meet the huntresses and Artemis is immediately like, you guys stay here and don't do anything. And they're like, all right. And the huntresses mostly sit in camp and don't do anything. And the 2 huntresses that do come on the quest are the 2 least useful people on the quest. Bianca and Zoe are the least beneficial members of the team. That's not as true about Zoe, because Zoe does drive them. And so without her, they wouldn't have had a driver. So maybe that's not 100% true. But the book did bring in the huntresses mostly to like beat kids at Capture the Flag and not be good at anything else, which felt a little bit underbaked. Which I've said. The huntresses felt underbaked to me. Yeah, we've kind of talked through it all. They don't kill Bessie, which is good. I think they should have. I'm a far more practical person. But if I was a god and a 13-year-old told me not to kill Bessie, I don't know that would necessarily have stopped me. Dad says, what is your thought about the scene where Percy swallows his pride and asks Mr. D for help because of Thalia? I really liked it. I liked it because I think Mr. D is a really good character in that he just feels so broken by the fact that he has to like meet these kids and watch them die, right? And so all of his personality feels like a defense mechanism. If I was being forced to raise children that I knew were not going to make it to adulthood, my barometer for life would be very different. And I just think that there's something really beautiful about Mr. D and the way he finally does start helping in this book because the stakes are getting higher. And like, I genuinely think that part of the reason why Mr. D is as helpful in this book as he is because Annabeth is gone. And Annabeth is one of the kids who was a year-rounder for years, who he has more of a relationship with. He's been around her more. And it's like, oh, God, she's not just there in the summer. She's there year-round, right? Which all the demigods should be. The fact that any of them go to school is just, it's still one of the weirdest world-building things I've ever read in a book. But so Mr. D's relationship to Annabeth is deeper, right? They've spent a lot more time together than he has with other kids. And she's the one that's missing, and that's when he shows up. And I definitely think there's something to that. And so him in this whole book I liked quite a bit. He finally calls Percy, which I really liked. I know, the great Mr. D stuff. Pinky Rhonda says, I also think the purpose of bringing things up as you go helps with teaching kids about Greek myths in a tolerable pace. No water hose, also mystery element. I don't know that I agree that this book does a good job of teaching you Greek myths. Oh, that's an interesting thought. I think that if this is an introduction to Greek myths to go learn about them somewhere else. But I don't know that it's so much teaching as it is just bringing up tangentially related things to Greek myths without a lot of the context of those Greek myths. It got me through Latin class? Oh, maybe I'm wrong. And you know, I'm not an expert on Greek myths. I think it's more about sparking interest in Greek myths than I feel like it necessarily teaches you them. But you know, I think part of that, the reason why I feel that is it brings up things out of order of them. So like, you know, the trials of Hercules are referenced in this book. But the reason why Hercules is taking the trials of Hercules isn't, right? But like some of the events of that are in the book. I don't know. Yeah, it sparks interest, yeah. But it's fun. It's a fun series. I don't like this book as much as the first two, which I've said multiple times, but I do like it. Like Rick Riordan's writing is strong enough that I'm never bored, which is great. And honestly, like as much as the kids that are supposed to be kids all really work for me as kids. Like Percy, Talia, Nico, Annabeth, Bianca, the ones who are actual children all feel like they really work for me. The characters that are kids but aren't actually kids don't always, I'm just being honest. Zoe, Grover, mostly those two, they don't always work for me because it does feel a little bit like we're riding the line between them being children and not. And I don't know that Rick Riordan rides that line consistently enough for me to feel like they really work. The inconsistencies in them feels a little bit more off than how consistently I feel like the children who are actually children are written. But still very fun stuff. I disappointed in Grover in this book, for sure. I would like for Grover to have a little bit more character growth. Especially because it feels like Annabeth and Percy are really outpacing him in character growth. And I want him to learn a little bit more from his mistakes. He's 30. You know what I mean? Like, he's just in a different part of his life. He has a job. Like, he has an actual job. He's not a kid. And I want him having his secret license to help him feel a little bit more like an adult in future books. As opposed to trying to artificially bring him down to Percy's level. I don't think he needs that. I think he can just be a little bit older. It would be nice to have someone with a little bit more maturity on these quests, but we did it. We did 3 books. Is there anything I didn't talk about? Is there anything I didn't bring up in the last 2 hours and 20 minutes discussing the Titan's Curse? Emerson says, I feel like this series is good at teaching who characters in mythology are, not particularly the myths themselves. Yeah, I agree with that. So sort of in the same way that Class of the Titans does that, or it does a good job of rounding out what their traits and personalities are, so that when you read the myths you have a primer on who characters are. I agree with that. And it does so in a way that's genuinely really fun. One thing, I had a thought this week, and this might be really controversial in the Percy Jackson fan base. I don't know. But I did feel now I'm 3 books in now, and one thing I am curious about is the fan base's obsession with Camp Half-Blood. And I'm sure this is controversial, but because I feel like Camp Half-Blood is a place to be very nostalgic about if you have your own camp experiences. But I don't know that the books do a great job of making Camp Half-Blood feel like a place I would want to go. Mostly because the books don't really spend any time there. It's all skipped over. And I find that particularly interesting. And so I wonder if future books spend more time at Camp Half-Blood or do spend like more time building out what's so great about it. Because it's not like, I hate referencing Harry Potter. But the Harry Potter with Hogwarts feels magical. Like, Hogwarts really feels like an incredible place to go as a kid. And Camp Half-Blood kind of feels like a place you have to go because you're not safe, where there's 2 adults. One of them will be mean to you all the time. The other is Chiron, who's like nice and will train you. And you don't really do anything there except like normal camp stuff. Victor Sada says it's mainly being kids of the gods. That's about it. But none of them are happy about that in the books. Like, but this is why it's weird, right? Is like, they're all miserable about being kids of the gods. And the kids die. It's not like Harry Potter, where you're like, oh, you're a wizard. And then you're going to be an adult wizard. And you get to go to school, this really cool school for 7 years. And then you get to graduate and you get to go like live your life and be a wizard. Camp Half-Blood is like a fucking nightmare where, like, yes, you get to learn archery, but like you can learn archery in real life. But like in this book, they bring up that there's lava on the obstacle course. That's a nightmare, right? Like, you're losing a leg. There aren't enough amputees in Camp Half-Blood, given that they do an obstacle course on lava, on like real lava. The book should be filled with people with horrific scarring and just crazy burn marks. Because you're 12 doing an obstacle course. Like, you're not going to be good at it the first time. You're going to, like, people make mistakes. The books don't bring up enough that the children have permanent scars from being attacked by magical weapons. I didn't bring up, Percy and Talia come to blows over the capture the flag thing, and Talia shoots Percy with a lightning bolt. And that's when Kyron steps in is like, whoa! Percy attacks her with water. That scene was wild. I was like, you hit a child with a light, Talia. Holy fuck, girl. But Percy's demigod. They are demigods. I don't know. Maybe it's just that people want to be demigods. I just don't. The obsession with Camp Half-Blood and the t-shirts to me is weird because the main characters don't wear the Camp Half-Blood t-shirts all the time. And when they're at the camp, it's not usually great. Maybe later on in the series, being at the camp is better because they have a better relationship with it. But Percy's usually being bullied. I just can't imagine being nostalgic for a camp where most of what you see happen there is Percy be bullied, gaslit, demeaned, attacked, made fun of. Camp Half-Blood for Percy, and he keeps being like, God, I can't wait to go to camp next summer. And I'm like, why? Everyone there's so mean to you. Nobody likes you. He constantly talks about how lonely it is in his bunk because he's the only one in there. Like, Percy's is straight up not having a good time. And then at the end of the book, he's always like, God, I can't wait to go back to Camp Half-Blood next summer so I can be bullied more. The book pretends that it's nostalgic for Camp Half-Blood, but Percy does not have a good time at Camp Half-Blood. Every time he's there, they're like, Percy, you can't go on the quest. We don't like you. You're dumb. every time we do any event of capture the flag or any like competition, you are the reason we lose. And everyone blames you for that. Or in book 1, they win, but Percy like Annabeth does win capture the flag in book 1, but Percy particularly feels used by her for that, and he gets violently attacked and nearly murdered by a giant dog. Like, what experience at Camp Half-Blood is he so nostalgic for? Victor DeSana says, should be noted, Riordan's autistic son is meant to the one of book kind of stars. Yeah. Yeah. But, like, Rick Riordan is, like... Rick Riordan created a play. Wait. I'm going to say something. I'm not trying to be mean when I say this at all, but I don't know how this is going to come across. But Rick Riordan created a book about a kid who is dyslexic and has ADHD because his kids have mental stuff. And I love that he tried to write that for his kids. But he created that book, and he's like, there's a place in this world where you can go if you have dyslexia and ADHD, and it's a place where you are special. And then Percy Jackson, the main character, goes to that place and is immediately just bullied by everybody. So Rick Riordan is like, even at the special summer camp for the special kids, you're gonna get bullied. Like, I really need my kid to know that even at the place where your disability isn't a disability, you're still gonna get bullied for it. It's just a wild, like, that part of this world is wild to me. Percy is bullied constantly. Like, he's so maligned at Camp Half-Blood by everyone. Everyone's always mad at him. And the books are like, oh man, Camp Half-Blood's the fucking best. I get to go there, and Clarice and all of her friends beat me up all the time. And I get it, like, getting beat up by a bigger, like, a cute older girl who beats you up all the time. There's the beginnings of a fetish in that. But I just, the way, like, die hard Percy Jackson fans talk about Camp Half-Blood. And, like, when I see, like, when the musical was in New York and everyone was, like, descending on the musical wearing the t-shirts, I just figured that the camp was this, like, amazing place in the books that was, like, the fucking tits, where everyone was, like, friends and you had all of this. And then I'm reading these books and I'm like, Percy has, like, 2 friends. Everyone else constantly hates him. Everyone else is so mean to him all the time. The teachers are mean to him. The temporary teachers come in and immediately hate him. Fucking everyone is always just mad at Percy, or telling Percy he can't participate, or telling Percy that he, like, can't go save Annabeth because he's a boy. And Percy just is like, well, I'm gonna do it anyway. God, I love Camp Half-Blood. They don't want me, but I keep showing up. I don't think that's a takeaway I'm supposed to have from it, but it is what it feels like. It always feels like everyone's just always so furious with him. I think the t-shirts are because that's the only way to cosplay in this world. Oh, for sure. I just mean more that, like, hearing people talk about, at, like, cons and stuff, being like, oh man, my number one fantasy place to go is Camp Half-Blood. Like, as a kid, like, I have ADHD, and so I always wanted to go to Camp Half-Blood. And I'm like, but there's so many bullies there. Like, having ADHD and dyslexia does not preclude you from being bullied at Camp Half-Blood. You still have to deal with that. And so you're just nostalgic for being bullied in a different place, I guess. I don't know. Although I guess you could be one of Mary's kids, and then you are the bullies. But then, like, you are a bully. Like, Rick Riordan created this world for his kids to be like, hey, like, having a disability doesn't make you less than. And I think that's beautiful. He just followed that up with, but also, you're still gonna get bullied. Just an interesting choice. It's just interesting. I'm just connecting dots. You know what I mean? I'm just asking questions. All right. It's the climbing wall of lava I would want to avoid. We can figure out the bullies. Yeah. Big Yamada says it's deaf to demigod powers. I guess. What powers do they have, though, right? Percy has powers. It definitely feels like Percy has powers, and Talia has powers. I don't know that a lot of the other kids seem to have powers. Hephaestus' kid, not Bartolomeo, that's One Piece. The Hephaestus' kid seems to be, like, preternaturally gifted at building things. I don't know that... Maybe I wish they showed off other kids' powers more. I wish that the other kids were involved more. Because it would have given someone to die in this book that I cared about. Like, Bianca and Zoe both die, but we meet them in this book, and we don't have enough time. More powers show up as the series goes on. Yeah, I figured, because we're going to get into the war, and, you know, other kids are going to have to start getting involved. I'm curious moving forward, like, how we find ways for the kids to feel, I don't know. Curious. There's only 2 books left, which feels crazy to me. Do the books get longer? The next book is called The Battle of the Labyrinth. Ooh, that sounds fun. Like, this one is 312 pages. Book 4 is 361. And then The Last Olympian is 381. It is really wild to me that these books, there's only 2 books left and they're not that long. And it feels like there's a lot to do. And it feels like there's a lot of characters. Like, because Harry Potter, I'm not bringing it up because I'm a fan of it or I'm supporting it. I just keep bringing it up because it does feel like the thing that is closest to this in terms of when it was made and also, they feel tonally very similar. Oh, yeah, these are all shorter than Harry Potter books. But, like, you know, like, by the time you even get to, like, book 4 and 5 of Harry Potter, you're looking at 736 pages and 872 pages. And so it's, every year is is a year jump. Vic's I don't know, because this is only this would be 5 months after book 2? So it's not a year jump every book. So I'm assuming the next book takes place the next summer. So there's only a year between books 2, 3, and 4 will all take place within a year of each other, I think. But, you know, a Harry Potter book, once you get past book 3, a Harry Potter book doubles in length, right? The book 3 is 433 pages and book 4 is 736 pages. And so as those books get deeper, they get significantly longer. As the stakes of them and the stories of them get bigger, I'm a little concerned that the size of this series will never get as big as I want because the books just aren't long enough. And so I don't know how much this series is going to have like that lasting impact on me of the size of the books growing as the story gets bigger, even though there are a lot of characters. And here's the thing about this book. I think this book could have been a lot longer. I think there's so much room in this book to slow down and spend more time on it, given what it's about. And I wish the book honestly had. Like, I wish this book was, like, 50 pages longer. And we had more time after Bianca's death. We had more time with the beginning of the book kind of establishing that we go on missions now and what that means. I think that the scope of these books is getting bigger, but the word count is not expanding with it. And so these books, I think this book feels more rushed because of that. I never really felt like the first 2 books felt rushed. But this one feels like the plot rushes a little bit because there's not enough book to expand upon its ideas as much. Even though the ideas are bigger and deeper and more interesting, because the book didn't want to get much longer than the previous books, it kind of gets to them faster. And that kind of holds back them from ever feeling as deep as I feel like some of the less shallow or the more shallow ideas from the first 2 books were explored to their fullest extent because the amount of time made more sense for them. If that makes sense? I don't know. If you want longer books, that'd be the sequel series. The sequel series isn't about Percy, though, right? Like, Percy's story's done, and then we move on to Kane? It's called the Kane Chronicles, right? Or is the Kane Chronicles different from the Heroes of Olympus? Percy Jackson. I honestly think I prefer when the books are shorter because they are shallow and don't get explored, so longer is necessarily better. Percy continues. Oh, interesting. Okay, let's just look at the books in the series. Oh, okay, so there's... Oh, okay, so there's 2 adventures. Okay, so there's The Last Olympian is book 5, and then Chalice of the Gods and Wrath of the Triple Goddess are from 2023 and 2024. But then Heroes of Olympus... So, does it go into Heroes of Olympus, or does it go into the sequels? Kane Chronicles is a spin-off series. Oh, Kane is about Egypt. That's where the Egypt stuff comes from. After Heroes of Olympus. Okay, so then it goes Heroes of Olympus, and then it goes The Trials of Apollo, and then it goes back to senior year? Okay. So Heroes of Olympus is The Lost Hero, The Son of Neptune, The Mark of Athena, The House of Hades, and The Blood of Olympus. Ooh. And those are about Percy still? So there's 12 books about Percy? Where do the Trials of Apollo come into this? Oh, and then there's Nico... Oh my god, then there's Nico Angelo books? How many fucking books is in this goddamn series? Wait a second. Oh, there's so many more books than I thought. Oh my god, what? Okay, so there's the 5 original series. Then we have the 5 Heroes of Olympus. That's 10. Then we get the 5 Trials of Apollo books. We're at 15. Then we get the Nico D'Angelos. That's 7. There's only 2 of those. That's 17. Then the Kane Chronicles, maybe? That's 20. Oh my god, there's like Magnus Chase and the Gods of Asgard. There's so many fucking books in this series. Holy shit. Kind of sideline Percy in Heroes of Olympus and Apollo. Oh, so he's not the main character. Oh, okay. Kane isn't part of the timeline. Interesting. I can't believe how many fucking books there are in this series. That's crazy. I thought there were like 12 total. I did not realize there were like 25 books and a bunch of like novellas. The Demigod Diaries is a collection of short stories. Demigods of Olympus is an interactive ebook. Dude, Rick Riordan must be fucking rolling in it. This dude's gotta have cash money. Okay, how many... I need to... Where is Rick Riordan's Wikipedia page? Okay. Oh, so he basically he pumps out one of these a year. That's interesting. Sorry, I just got really into... It's kind of Cosmere-esque in that there's different series that kind of coexist. Interesting. And so does Percy Jackson kind of become like too powerful, and so he's only in them sometimes because he's just kind of... There's a point where he just kind of is like a solution to all problems. God, some of these books he put out 2 in a year. This dude's a machine. Wow. Like, he put out The Lost Hero, the first Heroes of Olympus book, and The Red Pyramid, the first Kane Chronicles book, in 2010. I'm learning so much. Dude is a fucking master of pumping out shit. This Wikipedia page is like going through and being like, oh yeah, there's like 4 books that came out in 2009. There's like 3 books that came out in 2010. There's also a musical. Yeah. Well, he's just kind of tired of the gods BS at a certain point. Oh, that's interesting. He like gets over his own series and starts fucking with it. It is interesting. It doesn't seem like he's really moved on to writing much outside of this series, though. Oh, I guess he has this Trey Navarre series. I don't know what the fuck that is. So he's written a bunch in that. 39 Clues. Okay, so he's written like like 10 books outside of this world. Or 12. There's more books down here. I don't know, man. I don't know. He writes, what a machine. This is prolific. I did not know your game, Rick Riordan. I hope you enjoy all of the money that you have, because he must be fucking rich, hey? He's getting a cut of every one of those fucking orange t-shirts. Dude is rolling in it. And honestly, good for him. Here's the thing about Rick Riordan, man. He seems like a good dude. I don't know that I like necessarily think the books are like the greatest things ever, but they're fun. I would re-listen to them. I have a blast with them. I don't think they're like the greatest fiction of all time, but at the same time, they're all solid and they're a good time. And I think that it's really easy to see why they have such a big following, right? And on top of that, every interview and everything I've seen with him, he seems like a rad dude who just wants to like entertain kids. And so he's one of those people where I'm like, hey, like, you don't have to be the greatest author. Not every author has to be the greatest author ever, and no one is going to be, right? It's all this subjective storytelling stuff. Write a lot of really good stuff that people love, entertain the shit out of people, and be a good person. Rick Riordan is that, right? And so I have no qualms with his success. I think everything I've seen about the guy, it seems like he has like really solid opinions about progressive ideals. I just think that he's the right kind of person to be famous and rich. You know what I mean? He seems good. His head is in the right place. The way that they're handling the casting on the show is interesting and diverse, and like he's open to changes like that. I don't necessarily think the show's making all good decisions, but I do think that Rick Riordan is trying to be a role model for how to be a good person in the space, and I appreciate that quite a bit. And so I have no qualms with him. I'm sorry if I've been a little bit more critical of this book than the previous two. I do have some serious kind of like about it. Particularly, I just wish Bianca was more developed. But ultimately, like, he's a very successful writer who's written books that are very fun and people love them. Like I have my feelings on them, and I'm gonna keep reading them because I'm enjoying it and I want to see where it goes. Yeah, he's considered Uncle Rick in the fandom, and I get that, right? Like, I'm just glad that it's not like creepy Uncle Rick. He's Uncle Rick in a way where you're like, oh yeah, like I would ask him to drive my kids to a hockey practice. You know what I mean? That's the vibe he gives off. He seems like old reliable. And I think that's awesome. That's my feelings on the book. We'll be back in a month with Labyrinth Battle. If you want to commission a chapter reaction to the Battle of the Labyrinth, you have to get that in, when do I want to say? A week from today. We'll set that for a week from today because I want to start reading it. So he's always perfect and makes it. He tends to at least try and correct the mistakes. Yeah, it seems like he's aware of that stuff enough where he like is able to like say, yeah, I'm gonna say the deadline is next week's book club because I want to start reading the book Arzu. So deadline for Battle of the Labyrinth commissions will be Friday, March. What is that? It's Friday, March 6th at the end of book club. Where can I recommend books for the book club? Death, I would recommend the Discord. Go to our Discord We are going to keep running the Discord through the change to it needing your ID. If you don't want to give your ID to Discord, and I understand if you're leaving that platform, we are working on an alternative, but until then, Discord is still the best place. If we can figure out a better place to kind of convene the community moving forward, we will. We'll keep the Discord running, though. All of my information's everywhere online, so I don't really mind as much. But I understand people who are not in the position I am, where you're just constantly flooding the. Everybody already has my data. AI already has my driver's license. Yeah, I'm from the EU. If Discord asks my ID, I'm out. Yeah, no, 100%. I completely agree with Jimmers. I'm hearing that like it's just gonna be some features. So as long as our channels aren't age gated, you'll still be able to access our Discord without an ID. Also, book club is really busy for the next several months. What do you mean? We're only doing Dungeon Crawler Carl, Kushiels, Expanse, Percy Jackson, and probably just those for a bit. But who knows? I'll probably add something else. I do want to do the Strength of the Few, the follow-up to Will of the Many at some point. I don't know when that's going to be. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate y'all being here today. This was fun. My high for this book. Let's do low first because I want to do high second. My low was Bianca's death. Bianca not being a little bit more established before her death. She felt a little bit like we need to establish conflict between the son of Poseidon and the son of Hades, and Bianca was used for that purpose. And so I just wish she'd been a little bit more of her own character before she got fridged. On the flip side, my high of this book, that's tough. There's a lot of really high sections. I think my general high is the way in which the romance between Percy and Annabeth is being handled because they're kids. It feels very like age appropriate in an interesting way, and I find Percy's persistence for Annabeth really driving for the series, and it's handled really well. And there's so many moments in this where the lengths Percy would go for Annabeth are so apparent and lead the book to some really great heights. If you want to follow me on the internet, you can. I'm at nerdynightly. If you like this video, subscribe to it. If you're listening to the podcast feed, please give us 5 stars wherever you're listening. Leave a review. It is the best way to help the podcast grow. They don't really recommend podcasts that don't get reviews and 5-star reviews, unfortunately, because that's just how it works. So if you like me at all, consider that. It's free. But if you want to support me with monetary things, hell yeah, brother. I will never say no to that. Come over, join the members here on the Wordy Book Club YouTube, or for the best bang for your buck, join the patrons over at patreon.com/nerdynightly. You get everything over there that you get in any of the individual places anywhere else. We get all of it for the low price of just $5 a month. American, I don't know what it is in wherever you are in the world, because most of you aren't Americans, and I appreciate the international audience that we have here. So thank you, everyone. I will see you all next time. And we're not going to do Smut Corner because they're all children. So, yeah. Don't be weird about that. Do something nerdy night, everyone. Thank you, mods. Bye.